Well, good morning, everyone. If it's evening where you are, well, it's not here. So that's just what you get. You get a good morning. You can save it for later, put it in your pocket, and then the next time the sun comes up, you can just remember, yes, someone did wish me a good morning today. You are currently, your ears are residing inside of Breaking Change, which is an audio production. Not to be confused with Breaking Bad. Certainly not Breaking Good. Just broken. Now that officially or unofficially, TikTok is down. It's unreachable in the U.S. Aaron has reported, our Seattle correspondent for the broadcast, that even over his VPN he can't get to TikTok. His arms are itchy. He's scratching. I hope wherever you are, I hope that you and your loved ones and your teenagers are okay. But yeah, anyway, now the TikTok is down. Maybe some of you are here because you've got nothing else to do and you need something to fill that void. So thank you for joining. Something that I've been meaning to do at the beginning of this of the show for the last 7 versions has been to kindly ask that you go into your podcast player of choice and you rate and review the show. I would prefer 5 stars on a 5-star scale, but if it was a 10-star scale, 10 stars would be better. Thumbs up or whatever. Write a little review explaining why the fuck somebody would want to listen to an explicit language, tech-adjacent programmer-ish gaming movie, whatever the fuck this is, dialogue. Because I have found that Breaking Change is a really hard pitch, when explaining to people. It's like, oh, it's just me talking, just like drive time AM radio used to be, except instead of talking about a bunch of politically charged propaganda, we're just hanging out. And instead of having a commute, you're walking a dog or you're doing the dishes. Although I guess, maybe you listen on a commute. I've heard from listeners on road trips listening to entire episodes all in one stretch. And that's something else. I have not heard from a lot of commuters. So if you listen to this while you're commuting, shout out at podcast@searles.co. If you're driving, don't try to rate and review, in a distracted fashion. But next time you think of it, you slam that 5-star button. You know what? It's I got a lot of subversive elements, in my cadre of people because I am a total piece of shit and I attract the good and the bad, everyone in between. But some of us, we appreciate a good troll. There is no better way to stick it to the man and confuse the hell out of people than for all of you to go and give this 5 stars in iTunes and in your podcast player. And then have a whole bunch of people, have it surface in the algorithm for others. And then they listen to this. And then they're like, what the fuck is going on to my ears right now? I am very confused. And if that's you, hell, you know what? Oh, shoot. I'm speaking from the past. Maybe this is the future where this is a lot of 5-star reviews and some rando outside of Argentina is getting this put into their feed for them. And now they're like, 4 minutes have passed. What am I doing with my life? Well, hello. You are also well. Good morning to you as well. By the time you're listening to this, I'm recording Sunday morning first thing. I know from experience that it can be hard to pretend to work during a Trump inauguration. So I figured that instead of pretending to work, you could be here with me instead. If you're listening on Monday. And if you're fortunate enough to have Monday off, I guess one difference between the previous Trump inauguration and this one is that the inclusivity backlash against the Trump admin, that has now recently receded, if you're to believe the Bezos and billionaire class, has resulted in way more people who don't work at post offices getting MLK Jr. Day off. So I suppose many of us are not working on Monday. But regardless, this is version 29 of the program titled Super Switch, which, no one in the audience, I think a lot of you know probably what I mean by that. We'll talk about it later. In life news, it feels like it's been way more than 2 weeks since I talked to y'all. When you live in a theme park, there's just a lot going on. People coming and going, stuff to do, stimulation overload. That's why I sound so just, demure, downbeat, chill here, is because I am exhausted permanently all the time. Because every time I leave the house, I am just overstimulated. Last night we went to a birthday party of a friend in the Orlando proper part of Orlando, whereas we live in theme park Orlando. So we had to drive over the treacherous terrain known as I-4, the deadliest stretch of highway in the United States, in terms of only in terms of the number of people who die on it. The party was it was funny because our friends, they're building a house on this beautiful lake, huge property. It's absolutely gorgeous. The house is a custom build. And a couple years ago, the one whose birthday it ended up being said, we're going to have my 45th birthday party here at the house after it opens. The water slide, we're going to have DJs. It's going to be a big blowout fest. It's going to be awesome. And then his husband was like, it's not going to be ready yet. Don't get your hopes up. And sure enough, both things came to pass. The house is nowhere near ready. It is an active construction site. And they trolled us hard. They said, "Hey, come to this hotel. We're gonna have free valet or whatever." And then we go into like a normal kind of like typical ballroom thing, and you get a cocktail. And then these construction workers show up, and they herd us into buses. And so people are in their cocktail attire. Becky wore I don't know if you'd call them heels, but elevated shoes for first time in a while. More of a flats person, which I respect because I'm also a flats person. And we all get into the bus and everyone's dressed up. And then they drive us to the active construction site that is our friend's house. And they had the events planners and everyone like actually just decorate the shit out of, what is a lot of concrete block. First floor of most homes around here is concrete. So the bones of the house are up, and they just decorated it with kind of construction paraphernalia, orange cones. All of the staff had, orange vests on. We were all given hard hats. The theming was truly on point. Weather was perfect. And it was a big raucous affair. Raucous? You know what I mean. So that was great. We didn't even stay out that late, but I feel like I got hit by a truck this morning. I kept it to a 2-drink maximum, which is my new go-to rule of thumb, because I always end up barely regretting the third from an ability to sleep perspective afterwards. Other life stuff, like the logistics following the death of my father. First of all, thank you very much for many of you wrote in to express sympathies. Probably don't need to put them all in the mailbag, because after a certain point it sort of reads like reading birthday cards on air, in terms of they also, not to diminish anyone's extension of grief or sharing their own stories, but there's a certain, beginning, middle, and end format to no one knows what the fuck to say. I don't know what to thank you. But yeah, like on the just sort of like finances and forensics front, trying to figure out how to tease out all the complexities of his life that he never really told anyone about and certainly didn't document. That the work continues. Still trying to help my mom consolidate her situation. It's been, just a lot of very procedural. All right, find all the stuff, organize the stuff, come up with a to-do list, figure out how to approach this, make all the phone calls that you need to make to all these institutions to iron it out and to continue fact finding, or to give, furnish whatever documentation they need. And because it's been so, I guess, transactional, rote, not to say it's colored my perception of dad or anything, one way or another. But it's definitely, when I look back on this era of my life, of course, his passing is going to stand out in sharp relief. But that was a week of stuff. And then the rest of it is going to be 3 months of stuff. And so I wonder how that's going to affect how I look back on it. But one of the things I noticed is a lot of different service providers, like banks, for example, that have bills coming up. You got a credit card bill, and let's say it's due. I don't know why I'm blanking. January 25th, and then January 18th comes around, and it says, "Hey, you have a statement due January 25th, or you got an upcoming bill, or your bill is ready to be paid." And when I get an email like that, so I just got one from Dad, or for Dad's account from U.S. Bank, and I was like, shit, because I know he didn't have autopay set up in a lot of places. And like, do I have that login? Like, do I have to coordinate with Mom to get the SMS thing? Like, I get into it, and then sure enough, like, because I thought I'd set up autopay, I even had a to-do list that said set up autopay for this, and autopay was set up. It was just emailing me unnecessarily anyway. If you're going to have a recurring payment or an auto payment set up, it's okay to notify the customer that there's another bill coming, but it would be really sweet if like autopay is enabled, just so you're set to autopay this on X and X date, because if you got as many cards as some people have, it can get kind of exhausting to just worry about. Well, I hope that's all set up. So it's things like that are just like random nonsense stressors, and the amount of context switching because you're constantly getting emails and calls from all corners. I normally screen my calls really aggressively, but this month I've got to pretty much answer it no matter who's calling, which is not my favorite. And I've found myself falling into something that I never thought I would do. Maybe it's because I turned 40 this week, but I've always associated this with like a generational thing. When somebody asks me a yes/no question, I've started saying yes or no, like the literal word yes. And that might sound mundane to you, but in my family growing up, the word yes always felt violent because everyone always had more to say, or they had a compulsion to soften it. Like, yeah, sounds a lot neutral, accepting, open, soft than yes. There's a certain like hardness to yes. You ask a yes/no question, the person says yes. It feels like there's a period at the end of that. And when you say yeah or okay or all right, or you give some sort of like like an invitation to either continue with a follow-up question or be open to maybe a retort or something. And so I had a colleague once who is the previous generation, who was my superior, and his name was Daryl. Daryl's a lovely person. But every time I asked Daryl a question, and I was asking him a lot of questions because I didn't know shit about fuck, and he knew a lot of things about everything, he would answer every yes/no question with just the word yes or the word no. And it felt so stifling and cruel and like why is he shutting me down like this, even though he's literally answering in the affirmative. There's something about the word yes, when unadorned with any sort of softeners or explanation or exposition or justification or invitation to follow up, there's the finality of it feels just rude, even though it is very literally fine. So I caught myself doing that, and I guess I've become a yes man. Other life stuff. Our Ninja, we seem to have like every Ninja kitchen appliance, just in some sort of rotation around, our kitchen. And it feels to me like every modern home, every year, there's like a counter surface inflation where the counters keep getting bigger, the kitchen islands keep getting bigger, and then almost a sort of like how a gas will expand to fill its container. Like Ninja appliances will continue getting invented to fill all available counter space in every home. And the reason that Ninja's been so successful is that, unlike Hamilton Beach and Cuisinart and stuff, like their products are actually pretty good and do what they say on the tin. But we had one of the air fryer units that can also, pretend to be a grill, even though like all that's really happening is a hair dryer is blowing downward onto your food and any sort of heating element underneath is indirect. We had one of those, and it just kind of got grody and gross from lots of oil and repeat washings, and food stuck to the basket, and it was no longer. You know how sometimes you use one of these appliances, you don't clean it as intentionally or as frequently as maybe the instruction manual tells you to, and eventually your food starts tasting like the bottom of the deep fryer at McDonald's, like just like that oil tarry kind of like afterglow, which really takes the shine off of whatever the omega-3s that you're trying to get out of your fish is. So we bought a new one, and what I really wanted out of a new one was one with like multiple heating elements, like where there was an actual grill that could sear stuff and cook from the bottom up, but also a convection oven that could crisp it up and sort of dehumidify. And amazingly, Ninja does sell this product. It was called, see if I can link to it, the Ninja Convection Plus Grill. No, that wasn't it. It's got a name. Something IG651. Okay, there you go. I'll put a link in the show notes. So the IG651, whatever, it's got like a barbecue griddle on it. It seems nice. And it does exactly that. It's got like a big wide surface element. You plug it in. It's a very complicated, unnecessarily so, a complicated thing where it looks like you kind of take a George Foreman style griddle. It's angled forward, meaning like it's got, I said griddle, just like the slabby kind of metal slats, where you put the burger on it, and then it's like, remember the George Foreman marketing? I'm sure you do, like, like it's like at the like the squeezing iconography to indicate like the fat is coming out, and then that will make this healthier, even though the fat is often the best part. So it's got that. It plugs into some like electrical, electrode input thing with two little donguses. I don't know why I'm even trying to explain this. It's fine. And you plug that in, you can wash it separately, but you can put a griddle on top that kind of maps to it, so it'll pick up that heat. And that is a flat surface, which can be nice if you're maybe, toasting a sandwich or something. And yeah, the thing about that search was that trying to answer the question of what heating elements are in this smart cooking appliance proved to be extremely difficult. You go to the Amazon listing, you go to the product page. I read up on every single Ninja product that does this. I started looking at other products that do this. I started looking at things that brand themselves as smart ovens that, advertise having multiple heating elements. Like the June oven did this. I think that's out of business now. Tovala did this. I think that's going out of business now, where they would have maybe a microwave element plus a steam cooking element, or maybe they'd have a convection fan inside and also an induction plate underneath. And none of them have really taken off in the US, unfortunately, such that it is a product category that the consumers are educated about, like what they're getting into. In Japan, there's a product called Helshio, like literally like health EO, but THs are hard. And it's got like the basic models have 4 or 5 different ways to heat your food. And then like it's really smart in that you punch in a code, like a recipe code, and it'll just do everything cradle to grave for you with the advanced sensors that it has, and kind of move between whatever combination at whatever point in the cooking process. All of those heating elements need to be arranged. And so things come out almost better than a human could do them, because they never have to be removed from this hermetically sealed environment, for people's hands to come in and adjust how the thing is being heated. Because in Japan, that product has been so successful that the 2 or 3 different tiers of that product, not only are they all good, but like no one needs to be explained what's there. Like it could just be like the higher level of literacy and education generally in Japan. But in general, like it's really straightforward. And here it seems to be that like people just want a device that they can throw food in, and then as long as they're picking off a menu and it has words like grill, they will feel good about it, and no one's going to ask, where's the heat coming from? How is this getting cooked? Which, now that I say it, of course, like Americans don't give a fuck how the thing gets accomplished or that it gets accomplished well, typically. Just that, they know what box to put the food in and then the button to hit, which is, a little bit condescending, but, y'all have earned it, in my opinion. So yeah, we got it. It works. As far as I know, I turned it on. The preheating started. We have not yet, broken the seal and actually cooked with it yet. But I'm glad to have that because I think shit'll turn out better, especially salmon, which is increasingly the number one thing that we were using our air fryer for, which was an inefficient use case. Speaking of the parks being really busy and life here being overstimulating, on Friday I found myself really testing the fences on this new being 40-year-old thing. I got up at 5 a.m. with Becky. We had a special event at Disney's Hollywood Studios that started at 6. We got there. There were other people there. We went to bed early, to be able to do this and not be super groggy and miserable. Had a great time. And then we had some friends coming into the park just about an hour after that event wrapped. And so we went and visited with them for a little bit. Then we came home and tried to recover some sort of a productive day. By then it was noon. And then that evening, because the same friends, they had their big day, I wanted to debrief with my buddy before John. His name is John. He is a listener of the program. So hi, John. Hello. Wanted to debrief with him, so we went over to a bar called Trader Sam's, which is Grog Grotto. It's in the Polynesian Resort Hotel. And it's one of my favorite bars because it's got like a lot of like little Imagineering knickknacks and stage elements that have since become very common at tiki bars. But we got in there, we spent a couple hours, and then pretty soon I realized, oh fuck, it's midnight. And I've literally been Disneying it up to some extent since 6 a.m. And so, I got a second wind in there, but I ultimately didn't get to bed until like 2. So that was a big day. I feel like I did all right from an energy level perspective. I think I was the person that I needed to be in all of the interactions I had that day, and that's probably the most I can say. I'm simultaneously finding that my body is falling apart. My left hip is pretty grumpy. It's just in sort of like a constant dull discomfort. Feels like a dislocated shoulder, but no matter how much PT I do, I seem to never fully beat it. I need a the smart oven equivalent for muscle therapies that people do. It's like, oh, you can get some of that. It'll apply the icy hot and also, drill you with a Theragun and also massage you and also use the, resistant bands exercises to strengthen it just all simultaneously. Cause it's like this round robin of attempts I've had to restore this fucking hip. It has been great. So that's been a constant thing. New things are like my right knee now hurts like hell. My left heel the skin started cracking from how dry it's been here. And of course, it's still way more humid here than the rest of the nation, but apparently my skin is so used to the humidity that I just woke up one morning and it hurt to walk because all my skin was exposed, because all my skin in my foot had cracked, Like, what the hell's going on? So if you're approaching 40 and you're worried about it, good. I don't know that I recommend it so far, but I'm still here, still kicking. So far, I almost didn't make it, to be honest. If I'm going to talk about this next topic, it's something that's come up in the show before, and so I think that technically makes it follow up. So let me hit this button right here. Yeah, so speaking of dying right before you turn 40, I'd mentioned that I-4, Interstate 4, that runs east-west through bisecting Orlando. It's known to be, and I fact-checked this against GPT because I knew I'd probably end up talking about it, deadliest stretch of highway in the U.S. And I'm an experienced driver insofar as I've been driving for 24 years. I don't love it. I'm not a car guy. I feel like I drive fine, relatively safely, probably more on the conservative side overall. I do speed from time to time, but as long as if you're in America and you're speeding, as long as you use the phrase flow of traffic, you can do whatever you want. And The problem is that when you live in theme park Orlando and you need literally anything that is not entertainment and hospitality related, like for example, and this is what puts this into the follow-up bucket of content. I've been talking on and off about having struggling with snoring. I've been doing that thing that a lot of middle-aged husbands start doing and deciding to interrupt their spouse's sleep by suddenly picking up this cool new habit that is just making wheezing sounds all night long. And mine's really inconsistent. It's clearly triggered by something. Couldn't really tell what. Is it diet or whatever? It's like clearly like none of the symptoms of apnea, so that's probably not it, given that I feel fully rested after like 4 hours and I'm never feeling short of breath. The new Apple Watch has an apnea detection and it seems to not be detecting any apnea. So I finally got a sleep study ordered, and the doctor, who is a very nice lady, she's just like, the reality of insurance right now is I will put in a request for an in-lab sleep study so we can watch you, because the alternative is an at-home sleep study. And based on everything you're saying, there is a 0.0% chance that at-home sleep study is going to find anything. And then I was like, well, then let's just do the in-lab like you're saying. Well, she's like, oh, the insurance will surely deny, based on what you're saying, an in-lab sleep study. You have to go through the motions of this at-home sleep study first, and then it has to show nothing. And then I can put in a script again for the in-lab, and then the prior authorization will go through, and then you'll be able to do that. And so I have to kind of do this performative nothing operation, this nothing like procedure, operation procedure. That's over, like diagnostic, just to check some boxes. And money is changing hands invisibly to me at every step, of course, for the most part, thanks to having health insurance. So I schedule this, and it's an at-home sleep study. Like, there are services that mail these units, they could ship it. I don't know, find a courier or something, but nope. This one, I have to drive to the other fucking side of Orlando, which is, it's 20 miles, but it's like a 45-minute, hour-long adventure. And I have to, calling them, the rules of the game were that I had to drive there Sunday night to pick it up, come back Tuesday night to drop it off. And because of sleep study locations, this is like an actual, testing center. They literally open at 6:30 p.m. in the evening. So that's when their shift starts. So I had to get there at 6:30. So that means like I'm basically fighting through rush hour into town, and then pick it up. And now I'm coming back home, and now it's like 8. So I guess I'll just eat dinner by myself or whatever. And it's not like in a part of town where it's like, hey, we can go downtown, like make a date night out of it and go to like a fun restaurant. It's like, I don't know. I have many times in this program suggested you should move to Orlando. Orlando's great. I love life in Orlando. But like, whenever I leave the bubble of like theme park party time Orlando, where everything's just really, really nice and customer service is incredible and the food's really great and it's just a party, and I go to like real Florida, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to stop recommending people move to Orlando, because this is like the median experience, and I would not, I can't do this for an hour. I don't know how I would possibly live here. No offense to Orlando, but I went and I picked it up. I drove my car there on Sunday night, and traffic was pretty bad, but it's always pretty bad. I had numerous cases of people jumping in front of the car on the way onto the highway. Once I was on the highway, I get into the new express lanes, which do make things easier. You pay a toll and you get, expedited traffic. And somebody pulled over into the shoulder. And as soon as he pulls over, he just whips open his driver's side door off of the shoulder. And now the door is in my lane. And there's, of course, somebody on my left, causing me to flip out and have to slam the brakes to the point of bad enough that smoke is happening, right? Like you can smell the burnt tire, because this dude is just like, I'm on the highway, I can open my door. I'm a big man. I'm driving a truck. So I chose not to blow his door off. Then on the way home, it was one of those ordeals where a sign said congestion, 4 miles ahead. I was like, oh, 4 miles. Okay, maybe I'll find an opportunity to get off the highway, or I'll get onto the express lane and try to avoid it. And Apple Maps was saying I should turn right at the Kia Center, which is like where the Orlando Magic play, and then take 3 more rights and then get back on the highway. And I was like extremely convinced that this was just some sort of, Apple Maps fuckery, and the computer being wrong, because it often is. I was like, I'm going to stay on the highway. I'm a smart guy. And the instant that I passed that exit that it wanted me to take, everything became a parking lot. And such a parking lot that it became road ragey pretty quickly, with people driving in shoulders and honking and trying to edge each other out, and motorcycles going between lanes. And there's just there's probably a metric that you could use for any civilization called like TTMM, time to Mad Max. And Florida has a very low TTMM. It doesn't take long at all for every man for himself instincts to seemingly kick in. So I did the rerouting, and now the phone is telling me, all right, well, literally, it's so demoralizing. You see the ETA to your home arrival move literally 40 minutes immediately, because I chose not to take its very wonky prescription of 3 right turns. And now I realize in hindsight, the reason it wanted me to do that is there's a direct entrance onto the express lane. And so not only did the ETA go up, not only do I have the regret that I didn't listen to the computer for telling me to do a stupid thing, but I also now am shamed by it's salt on wounds here. The left of me, the express lanes are wide open, and there's just like 5 cars just having a great time going 80 miles an hour to get to where they want. And everybody else is left in just this absolutely falling down style traffic jam just after dark. I did get home. I took a side street, and it was one of those ordeals where you take the side street, you go up a couple blocks, you go, you turn left, kind of go, I don't know, maybe a half mile just past whatever accident was causing the congestion, and then you get back on the highway. And the problem was, of course, we all have automated navigation systems. They all reroute us. And so that was immediately backed up. There was 3 traffic lights of people in the left lane trying to turn onto that 3rd traffic light. And it would have been another 20 minutes just waiting for those light changes. And so I just, fortunately, I had a brain, and I was like, all right, I'm going to just blow past this and go in the right lane and drive forward three intersections, and then do a U-turn, turn right. And then I successfully beat the rush, and I got home, and it merely only wasted 20 minutes of my time. But here, this story has already wasted 5 minutes of your time. So it was death-defying, because even once off the highway, virtually none of those drivers had ever been on those side streets or in that neighborhood before, and they were all driving like it, and it was dark, and there were not adequate streetlights. So it's not just that like Florida drivers are bad, but like you are surrounded by a certain number of frazzled dads who just picked up rental cars from MCO, who are trying to get to their Disney hotel, who just had a flight delay, whose kids are screaming, and nobody's happy. Like, that is the default energy. That is the best case energy, because that's before you consider the capital F, capital M Florida men and the tweakers and everyone else that just kind of contributes to this diverse fabric of society that we live in. So that was a bad experience. I did get home. I am still with us, but by the time I got home, I was so fried. Like I didn't want to hang out. Didn't want to talk to Becky. Just wanted to like pour a whiskey and collapse. The stress level is so high. I looked at my watch, right, and I was looking at like the heart rate history, and I was like, I was white knuckling it. But that's partly on me, right? Like I don't like that kind of driving. I don't like that stress. 2 days later, when I had to drop this device off, the device itself was terrible, by the way. It was probably less sophisticated than my Apple Watch, and probably reading like less accurate heart rate, and even the modern Apple Watch like does track breathing. That's how it does the sleep apnea thing through the magic of gyroscopes. And this device is a piece of shit, and I'm sure somehow the rental fee for a one-time use was $1,500 to my insurer. And I'm sure it found nothing. I don't know how it would find anything. It looked like it was built out of, Teddy Ruxpin era, technology in the mid 80s with the quality of the straps and the plastic. It just, ugh. But when time came to drop it off, I really did not want to repeat that experience on a weeknight when traffic would be even worse. So I humbly asked my brother, who has a Tesla. I said, "Hey, there's another follow-up item. We picked it up together just in October, I think." I said, "Hey, man, like, can I swing by, or you swing by, drop off your Tesla? He had some stuff to do at our house anyway." And he's got the full self-driving, they keep renewing a 30-day trial for him. And, full self-driving isn't. It is, the car will drive itself. You don't have to touch the wheel. It's very conservative. It has 3 modes: chill, normal, and hurried, or hurry. I've never tried hurry. I don't need to try hurry. I just stick on chill, because at the end of the day, as long as I get to where I'm going, I sort of don't care. I'm not in a big rush. I have the luxury of not needing to be anywhere in any particular pace. As long as I leave on time, I'm going to get there by the time I promise. But chill is good with me. And you have to supervise it. And it was the case when the full self-driving crap in Teslas first hit, that people were, at first it was just like pressure testing the steering column. And so people would use weights, weighted wristbands and stuff to make it trick the steering column into thinking that somebody was holding onto the wheel. And now they have cameras that look at you inside the cabin, and that camera is using some amount of intelligence to determine that you're distracted or not. So if you are looking a lot at the central tablet, it'll bark at you and say, "Hey, pay attention to the road." If you're looking at your phone, it'll do the same. If you're looking at a watch, I've had it even when I'm talking to the watch and looking forward, have it bark at me. And as soon as it does it, it makes a beep. And then it gets increasingly aggressive and beeps louder. Impressively, I say this because I'm sure that the reason it's like this is because Tesla is trying to minimize its legal liability for accidents caused by its system. If you ignore its beeps 3 times in a day, you get a strike. The system will disengage, and you will be forced to manually drive your car like a plebeian for the rest of the day. At least that's how Jeremy explained it to me. If you get 5 strikes, I want to say it is, you're just you're ejected from the full self-driving program. And I am impressed. Not only that it's as aggressive as it is, if you got to look at the screen for something, you've got to adjust it. You basically have 7 or 8 seconds to, fix the mirrors or whatever it is before you got to be looking at the road again. I'm also finding myself that when I'm driving his vehicle, I actually am significantly less distracted than in my own Ford Escape, which has CarPlay, and I typically don't touch the phone itself. But I tune out a little bit, or might look at something, or might be tapping away at the the iMessages and whatnot, seemingly longer in those cases than what the Tesla would let me get away with. So I'm paying more attention to the road because the computer is telling me to, or forcing me to. And I am also doing less of the driving. So, my foot's off the pedal, my hands are off the steering wheel. And when they say supervise, it's actually the right word. It is doing the driving, but it feels almost like a pilot co-pilot thing where your head's on a swivel. I can look to the left and I can look to the right, and I have far greater situational awareness as the car is driving. Now, granted, a lot of these semi-autonomous and adaptive, assistance in cars will, for most people, lull them into a false sense of security and result in further driver inattentiveness and unsafety, right? You'll train them out of the vigilance that you need at all times when you're the one driving a vehicle or being driven in a vehicle. However, the particular, and maybe it's just because I'm kind of coming in chapter 4 of this particular saga of full self-driving and robotaxis will be here in 6 months, says Elon Musk. And of course they're not there, but it seems like at least the way that I've experienced full self-driving when I've used it, it seems to me like I feel 1,000 times safer because the combination of the car mostly doing the right thing, mostly making the conservative choice. Absolute worst case, it blares at you and you need to take over. Combined with my own hypervigilance of not, I constitutionally do not trust computers, and Jeremy doesn't either. And so when we're driving these things, we're looking around all the time. We're sort of, because we have a curiosity in how the technology works, like trying to think about how is it thinking through this. Like we have a lot of, for example, automated gated communities where like the gates will open and close when you're entering and exiting. It's like we look at the little like computer screens, like what does it think is in front of it right now? It sees that there's an obstruction, and if it opens too slowly, is it thinking it's a permanent obstruction, or is it going to wait and then proceed after the thing opens automatically? Like there's a lot of little moments like that where it's actually kind of interesting to see how the car reacts, and then it gets a software update, and then how the car reacts after that. And then additionally, there's the typical ebb and flow of software updates generally where there's regressions, right? Like there was a version of this system that the ability, like it used to blow past this one particular speed bump near our neighborhood because it didn't have sufficient paint on the road to indicate that it was a speed bump. And then there was a software update, and then it perfectly negotiated all 4 speed bumps just right in a row every single time. And then there was another update, and now it blows past the 3rd speed bump again. And so I think that people who are technology enthusiasts who maybe follow this stuff and understand what software is, how it works, that updates are not a pure linear, march of progress. I think the idea that there would be regressions in software releases, or even non-determinism in how the computer car operates, that's totally natural to me, and I expect it. Now I groan at it, and I think like this is probably a bad idea in aggregate and at a population level. I suspect that the average driver would be confused by that the same way that like the average person is terrified of updating their phone or their computer because they associate software updates with newness and unawareness and all the things that they finally had working no longer working. And when you talk about the march of progress in technology, they sort of have what it is whenever anything goes wrong with technology, if you're not primed to know that it's burning you, it seems like people mostly blame themselves instead of blaming the technology. And if that's the way you use your phone or your computer, when the car makes a mistake, you might not realize it as a car making a mistake, and you might not have the hypervigilance that's like, a more adversarial. Like I feel like I'm constantly spot checking it, and while I am surprisingly impressed with how well it's been negotiating everything that we've thrown at it so far, it's made 1 or 2 mistakes, and I've dealt with it. But on net, like it's driving way more safely than I am. And it's taught me a few things. It's like, oh yeah, like whenever I do this at an intersection, like that's really dumb. Like it's doing this way better. I can't think of a specific example, but like I'm pretty impressed. And so I thought, well, I'll ask Jeremy to borrow the car because I've got this natural experiment now. Same time of day, same location. So I already know how to get there. It's a little bit goofy, but like because I was just there, I'm not going to feel like I'm learning how to get there and also learning how to use this auto driving system simultaneously. And holy shit. Like, yes, I had people jump out in front of the car. It was even worse this time at the particular intersection before you get to I-4. And the car like saw them out of its blind spot while it was turning right. It saw them on the left camera and brakes perfectly. And my first reaction was like, I would not have caught that. I probably would have cut it real close, almost hitting these people. You get onto the highway, and then this is why I emphasize like I-4 is like the deadliest highway in America, because it is not like driving on the highway wherever the fuck you live. Like anywhere I was ever in Michigan or Ohio or anywhere else in the US, or certainly anywhere I've driven in Japan, those are the only places I suppose I've driven, or Canada. Like yes, sometimes it's a little stressful driving on the highway. Like, that's not what this is. This is, you have to practice extreme defensive driving. And if you actually want to get where you're going, you also have to practice offensive driving. So having, 9 cameras in 9 directions is just necessary for basic, like, assurance of survival. Like, when I'm on I-4, I feel constantly under threat. And something happens every time. So we get on the highway, and that stuff does happen. The car on its own decided to take the express lanes by itself, which was incredible. But like, people were like, I was trying to merge into a lane, and then it was trying to merge into a lane, and as it was changing lanes, somebody who didn't even have a blinker on starts edging in, and the car knows I'm going to back off. There was another case of somebody swerving into our lane, like very close to the car, and the car, defensively, switched to the right lane, which was wide open, to prevent the risk that, it might have to brake suddenly. There wasn't enough distance between the cars. And that was stuff that, I only was actually even able to piece together what the fuck was it doing after the fact by, looking at the map and looking around me. It's just, it went great. Got there, dropped the shit off, turned around, The parking is wonderful too, because it'll back into every parking spot. You just tap the screen, it'll see the parking spots. You just tap which one you want, and it handles it for you. It parks way better than I park. I don't know, man. And on the ride home, not only, everything around me felt like it was on fire and chaos, but because I had a buddy who was doing the driving and I could just kind of be, patrolling and looking around, I actually got a low heart rate notification on my watch. Which I get them frequently because I have a low resting heart rate, but it'll say, hey, your heart rate's been under 40 beats per minute for the last 10 minutes. And, if that's not you, if that's not typical for you, that might sound scary, but no, my resting heart rate when I'm actually de-stressed and just chill is typically 38. So the fact that I could be on I-4 with a heart rate under 40, feeling completely safe more than anything. It's not about going fast or whatever. It's feeling like I've got a team of 2 that are dedicated to getting me home safely, me and this computer. It was a revelatory experience. Now, I realize it's a complicated situation because Elon is a big old bucket of assholes and the politics of it are all fucked. The right time to buy a Tesla was when everyone agreed that they were cool and EVs were good and the planet deserves saving. But yeah, I totally saw where my brother was coming from, and all of his friends who are similar technologists who have these things and who are, who got on board in the very recent hardware 3 or hardware 4 era of Tesla, particularly with the entry level models that are higher volume and therefore kind of more consistently produced. The Cybertruck, for example, most expensive but lowest volume and has the most problems. The Model Y at this point is pretty boring and dull, but if you are like me and just kind of think of cars, the modern day car is just a tablet with wheels. This is I had low expectations. I had a high level of suspicion, but it went great, and I successfully dropped off my snoring thing. I can't wait to get the results. That'll tell me that nothing happened. Another bit of follow up. I think I'd mentioned that I had used Rocket Money. So it used to be called Truebill, and then Quicken Loans bought it. And as Quicken Loans started branding itself as Rocket and having this Rocket suite of products, Rocket Money became its a consumer entree into upselling it to other products. And Rocket Money's promise is it's going to help you visualize all your subscriptions and even negotiate a tiny sliver of those subscriptions. And the one that I yielded to it was my Spectrum account. So my ISP had gradually been charging me more and more to the point where it was $145 after tax every month for the same internet program that was $100 when I moved here. And I was very skeptical when Rocket Money said, hey, we just saved you $893 a year by lowering your monthly bill to $70. And they sent me a new modem as well. And I was like, I don't need a new modem. It's the model number. It looks almost identical. And I was actually at UPS returning that modem. And I just thought to myself, what if this modem is somehow better? Because I have not been super blown away by the performance of my current one. And so I went to the trouble of unplugging the old one, plugging in the new one, setting it up, calling to activate. And my connection now is rock solid. So just by doing this price hack thing, I now have a modem that works way better. I was able to activate it myself without having some tech come over here. So all right, that's a win. But the statements were still showing up $140, and I was really skeptical that like this would materialize. But sure enough, this week I got a statement for $70, and I guess that means I owe Rocket Money 35% of whatever it saved me, and I don't know how that's paid or when that works. I'll figure it out. But if you're willing to, basically, I would recommend Rocket Money to anyone who is currently paying sticker price for whatever utilities. It's probably mostly ISPs and cell phone bills. If you're paying for like a normal plan that is still available and you're paying top dollar, call them, give it a try. But if you're like, like I am with T-Mobile, grandfathered in on some 12-year-old plan that has been replaced 5 times, and there's no like the most likely case then is it's going to put me on the latest plan and sign me up for all of the new throttling and 480p video and the shit that you don't want in terms of limitations. So check out Rocket Money. I was extremely skeptical, and now this is a Rocket Money ad, although it is unpaid. If you want to be a sponsor of the program, podcast at Searles.co. Another follow-up item. Let me tell you what it took to connect my Xbox controller to my gaming PC. So I have an Xbox Series Elite 2, whatever you call it, the fancy Xbox controller that costs like $170. And I like this controller. It's got the little paddles in the back. It's got, a nicer grip, interchangeable thumbsticks and D-pad and stuff. It's a very nice product, but it's talk about low volume things that aren't as reliable. It has a lot of reliability issues. And my right bumper button, like next to the right shoulder, it had been like very, very, it would miss like 70% of the clicks. And because the right bumper isn't the most important button in the world, like it just meant like, I guess I'm just not the kind of guy to throw grenades or whatever the right bumper is typically assigned to. I got a replacement, relative, like a cheap replacement through Microsoft support channel. I think they charged me $70. They didn't require me to ship back the old one. The replacement came and I plugged it into the computer to start setup and pairing. And the Xbox Accessories app was like, this is too out of date to be able to configure your controller, which was weird because Windows Update, which I check frequently, had said that I was up to date. But there was a little message at the bottom saying, Windows is up to date. Important security updates have not been applied. Make sure that your computer is turned on, which is weird because if I'm manually updating and nothing's saying that, it's like, where are these secret security updates that aren't happening? And when I dug into my actual Windows version, it said I was on 21H2. So the naming scheme for these major Windows releases seems to be the 2-digit year followed by H1 for first half of the year and H2 for second half of the year, which is real dumb, I'm going to say. Just a dumb way to name things. Numbers are good. I get it now why it's named that. But 21 was, if you decode the version several numbers ago, it was 3, at least... It was at least 2H1 ago. And why was I on such an old version? It turns out, I'll share like an article from just December. The Windows 11 required computers to have secure boot enabled using the Trusted Platform Module or TPM equivalent encryption. And that's to certify or to be able to attest that like the operating system has not been tampered with and so forth. And then this has all sorts of like DMCA, DRM, and HDCP, all this sort of a content encryption, copyright protection. Ostensibly, it's quote unquote security, and it's like making sure from a malware perspective that the veracity of the system files are all in place and so forth. But like a lot of nerds were not on board because they want to rip Blu-rays or whatever it is, and this might make it marginally more difficult. But gaming motherboards were like the last ones to the party to support secure boot, and even though I built my gaming PC well after Windows 11 launched, The BIOS that it shipped with did not support secure boot. It didn't support, I don't think, like booting from UEFI drives correctly either. So I'd set it up just like a normal basic fucking computer, and it worked for however long it worked. But apparently in December, Microsoft was just like, and you get no more updates at all. No more security updates, no more nothing, which is why I started getting that message. If you want to be on the latest and greatest version of Windows 11, you must have secure boot. Problem now is like it's been several years, and so figuring out what kind of motherboard I even have, I'm too lazy to like open the case up and look at it. And so I found the particular model number in my Amazon orders. So step one, I figured out what was happening. I guess step 0 is I get this new controller and I immediately regret it. Step 2, figure out what's happening. Step 3, check my Amazon orders, identify the motherboard. Step 4, I went to the motherboard website. I find that a BIOS update is available, and it adds the secure boot functionality because apparently the encryption stuff, hardware is on the device, which is great. So I download the BIOS and then I start flashing it. Not that kind of get your head out of the gutter. It requires identifying there's a particular USB port on the back of the motherboard that is the only one that can flash the BIOS. And you have to look for it. It says like M-flash on it. Okay, so you put it in there, you restart, you boot into the BIOS. And I got it to update. That part was actually pretty easy. Then you go into the BIOS, and I don't know what BIOS stands for. So if you're not like a PC person, this might not make sense. But it's the little bit of software that runs before the computer really starts, and you typically get there by hitting a key like F12 or delete. And it's if you weren't raised on Windows, it's a weird underbelly that sometimes you have to go into. It's got a lot of arcane settings. None of them make any sense. It's a lot of acronyms that aren't explained, even though modern BIOS systems typically have tooltips. It'll be like, what is MDR? And it's like this option determines whether you have MDR turned on and off. And there's like room for 2 more paragraphs to just maybe spell out what the fuck MDR is. I turned on the secure boot, figured that out. ChatGPT is wonderful for stuff like this. Like it gave me step-by-step directions because like there's probably 800 forum posts like detailing the same thing. After reboot, nothing worked. And like the computer would not boot. I turned on secure boot, which required turning on UEFI, which is like a related technology of like a more modern boot system for computers. And it turns out it's because that my drive partition map is master boot record MBR, which is like from the DOS era. And that was the default when I set it up in 21 or 2020. So now I gotta like turn off secure boot, go back into BIOS, turn it off, boot up into Windows under the old model, and then like figure out these like weird arcane like command line interfaces. Thank God there's something that there's a way to do this, like mbr2gpt/validate/disk : some number /allow full OS, and that would like attest like, yes, you can convert this type of hard drive partition map into this other one. And so then I do it, and I reboot again, I turn on secure boot again, and then it gives this fucking message. It's like, hey, secure boot function can only be enabled when the platform key is enrolled, which is, I know a decent amount of cryptography. I can kind of guess at like, thematically what it's getting at there, but like I'm in a bio, there's no internet connection. There's no about page. Like, I'm just like, what do I do? So I went off the rails, and I said, I don't want to do a standard secure boot. I'm going to do a custom secure boot. And then I clicked another thing that just said enroll all factory keys. And then that said, hey, we're going to reset this without saving option. And there's no cancel. There's just like save or don't save. I clicked save, and I rebooted. And then it all worked. And I just thought, man, like, how does anyone do this? The answer is, when you build a gaming PC, you are absolutely signing up for this kind of bullshit on a cadence. It used to be like, to keep a Windows machine running for the purpose of playing games, that was a custom build. You would expect every month or every 2 months to have some kind of rigmarole that looked like this. And I'd just been blessed that it had been almost like 3-4 years of this thing just mostly working before I had to, really do something drastic. The system worked. Suddenly it finds 3 years worth of updates. I install all those. And actually, like, I will say, Windows 11 is quite nice now. I see what people are talking about. Like, A lot of things the tabbed interface for the Windows Explorer works really well. Like everything feels much, much nicer. The downside is literally everything is now an advertisement. It's just like so many widgets. It's like recommending, when you hit the start button, it was like recommended apps, Slack. I'm like, I don't have Slack installed. Like I'm not in any Slacks. I don't even have a fucking job. Like, why are you recommending? Oh, right, because Slack is paying for like prominent placement just passively in the operating system. That is a paid product. And I get that like Apple stuff is full of ads in its own way for Apple services. But unless you're searching for an app in the App Store, like you don't see just, it would be like having Slack just land on your home screen and be like, hey, click me and then learn more about how you can pay us money. So, the takeaway here is if you are dedicated to the art of playing computer games, keep it simple. If you're willing to sign up for this bullshit, like by all means, like I think like the best performance, the best experience that you can have is only really attainable if you build your own PC, and it's not that hard to. There's services like PC Part Picker that make it pretty easy, but there is just no escaping the windows of it all. Speaking of, I've been talking about my Steam Deck, and I love that device. It's really nice. I was playing Yakuza 7 on it, and unfortunately, I was doing it with headphones in so as not to be loud at night, because if I'm playing in bed next to Becky, and the headphone jack just broke. It just stopped working. I thought it was my headphones. I tried 3 different pairs of headphones. It's just all static nonsense. So I RMA'd it. I contacted Steam and got an RMA label. I'm actually going to process that as just a return, so I'm going to send that out tomorrow. And because Becky and I are going on a cruise in a few days, like, I would like to have a device. So I ordered another Steam Deck, which is inefficient for sure, but I'd rather have a brand new one than, some kind of repair, I guess. So whatever. And at the same time, I was like, you know what? Like, it's kind of wasteful. And if you're not a gamer, this stuff doesn't make sense because it's all nonsense. But like it would be like having, if you have a gaming PC, it's like you can have multiple app stores installed. You have Steam, and maybe you buy some games on Steam, and then you also have like the Xbox app where your Game Pass subscription just gives you free access to lots of games. The Steam Deck is really great for playing Steam games, but unless you install Windows onto it, you can't play the Game Pass games. And I'm not like, I could if I wanted to. Say I'm playing Indiana Jones right now on Game Pass. I could buy it again for $70 on Steam, but like the save game wouldn't transport. I don't think, or wouldn't cloud sync probably. So I did a thing, and on the new Steam Deck showed up, and the first thing I did was I put Windows on it, because coming off this other experience with Windows, apparently I got overconfident. It was about a 3-hour ordeal, and that was following a really, really nice guide and using a lot of supporting software to make it easy to dual boot into Windows. And I got there, and I got it all updated, and I got all the drivers installed, and then I launched Indiana Jones, and then it just like was compiling shaders in the beginning, and then it just crashed. And it seems to have just crashed because it ran out of VRAM. And it seems like the solution to that is find a different game to play. And so I go in and I try to search for help and stuff, and realize that like the software keyboard in Windows, at least with how it's out of the box set up after installing the drivers on Steam Deck, like the software keyboard just refuses and will not open much of the time. And so like I can't type in most of the time. And so like I find myself now I've got a USB hub plugged into the Steam Deck so that I can have a normal fucking keyboard next to it so that I can type and try to debug stuff. And now I'm pretty, I'm nowhere near the point of being able to get just a Game Pass game running on a mobile handheld, and certainly not anywhere near the point of like throwing just the handheld in my bag and having any hope in hell that I'll be able just to hit a button and launch it like a game console. So the Windows on Steam Deck experience is very bad. And at the same time, Best Buy had a ROG Ally Extreme, Z1 Extreme Windows first gaming devices on sale. And I was like, you know what? I'm in the return period of everything. I've clearly, I have opened Pandora's box. I may as well just give myself over to taste testing all of these different options. So I bought one of those, and now it's actually lighter and smaller to a certain extent, which is impressive. I expected the Steam Deck to be more svelte, I guess. It feels pretty good in the hand. I haven't booted it yet because I'm still recovering from the experience of trying to get Windows onto the Steam Deck. And I'm interested in trying it, seeing how the performance is. Because if Game Pass works well and I'm happy with it, the ROG Ally was like several $100s cheaper than the Steam Deck. It's got a faster processor. It might be a little bit less convenient, but to be honest, the idea that I'd be rebuying all of my my games on Steam when they're also available, quote unquote, for free on Game Pass seems pretty silly. Because I'm as a one game at a time guy, being able to play the same game that I'm playing in the evening as when I'm remote sounds pretty nice. So stay tuned. I'm looking forward to trying that out. But as for now, I don't think Windows on Steam Deck is gonna happen for me. I think I'm gonna reformat the whole thing and just fucking start over. So that was a lot about. It was a lot. Hello, hi, how are you? Good morning. I'm glad you're here. Now let's. I think we need a palate cleanser. So let's hear a joke from our friend Aaron. Now, if you will recall, Aaron Patterson, who provides us with the content portion of this segment, where he writes a pun, he iMessages it to me via invisible ink so that I am seeing it and reacting in real time. He and I re-ranked all of the 2024 Season 1 puns, and those are now set in stone. That is the canonical ordering of the puns, from worst to bad. And this year, being just the second version, second release, we just have to determine whether or not the pun that we're about to read is better or worse than version 28's pun. And so I'll just read that one now. Aaron says, I was really hoping to play Balatro today, but I don't have time, so I guess it's not in the cards. And a useful bit of information is that Balatro is a card game. And then the pun might make more sense. All right, so we're going to sneak up here and just see what are we in for. What's he got in store? Oh, man. Brace yourself. I bought a Nintendo Switch because I heard it was going to be really fun to play. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it one bit, and now I feel like I've been Joy-Conned. I bought a Nintendo Switch because I heard it was going to be really fun to play. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it one bit, and now I feel like I've been Joy-Conned. Useful context for any non-gamers in the room. The little controllers on the left and right side of the Nintendo Switch are referred, they're Joy-Cons, Joy controllers. So he feels like he's been Joy-Conned out of his fun. That's a great example of a pun where you start with Joy-Conned. He must have thought of that and then had to work backwards from there to like make that make sense or come up with a reason to have been Joy-Conned, and the promise of fun followed by it not being fun. He got Joy-Conned. All right. When we talk about good pun or bad pun, like the big takeaway from the ranking was, all right, so we want to know about like how much time do we waste in the brains of listeners over the long haul. And the fact that the Switch is in the news right now for its reveal is going to have more stuff come out in April, probably release in May, June, and then continue to be a going concern for years. That tells me that a pun like this one, Joy-Conned, you're going to hear the word Joy-Con a lot. You're going to see Switches are going to be in the media. Probably more staying power than Balatro. And to say it's not in the cards is very straightforward wordplay. There's no custom construction necessary to make that happen. So I would say that in terms of psychological torment, this pun is clearly superior to version 28. So that we're going to say this is the new number one pun of 2025. How cool would it be if he was able to keep up a streak and have every pun be the number one pun. And I think everybody deserves to be in the spotlight for a day. Everyone deserves to be the hero of the story. Everyone deserves to be the star of the show at least once in their life. And as we have this just real optimistic feeling about the future and the world around us right now, is that we just people are coming together and we're all feeling great about how things are going on the planet. I'm going to extend that grace and that optimism, that starry-eyed, naive, just hope for the future to all Aaron's puns. I hope that all of them this year are the number one pun for exactly one version of the program. And then we'll re-rank them and when we tell them that they suck later, at least they'll have had that one day to shine. All right, so new number one pun there. That was easy. If you've got a pun, you should say it to yourself or to someone near you. People don't tell enough puns. But unfortunately, we don't have time for puns now because we got a lot of news to cover, and I think I'm going to try to keep it pretty upbeat. So let's see how we do. All right. The first item is a blog post. So it's not really news. I still don't know exactly what blog posts are. It's titled by a fella named Grant Slatton, or at least that's his domain name. It might be grantslatin.com. Wrote an essay called Nobody Cares. And nobody cares declaratively. Nobody cares. And it starts off, why does nobody care about anything? The world is full of stuff that could be excellent with just 1% more effort, but people don't care. It's got a sort of like a rhythm to it, so I'll keep reading a bit. Have you been to the DMV? It sucked. There's a human being whose job it is to be in charge of the DMV. They do not care that it sucks. Ever use a piece of software that's buggy as hell, looks bad, but still costs money? Presumably because the company behind it has found some regulatory capture to justify their existence. The programmer who wrote it probably doesn't care. Their manager definitely doesn't care. The regulators don't care. And he goes on and even better, you might think something incentive systems, but no. At my big tech job, I had the pleasure of interviewing a few programmers who worked for a large healthcare company that engages in regulatory capture. And let me assure you, they do not care. And goes on to talk about municipal governments. He lives in Seattle and complains about that. And it's not a super long post, but it's written in kind of tight, short, little couplets or paragraphs. And this experience of being surrounded by people who seem to not care. We talk sometimes about taste. Do people have taste? For example, the Ninja heating thing, right? Is it ignorance, laziness that no one's thinking is it, how the thing is working? How is it heating my food? And what impact does the way that it heats my food have on, how the food turns out and how good it tastes? Is it? I think that the Occam's razor explanation for what seems to be the death of giving a shit is not structural systemic incentive problems. It's not that nobody's sufficiently rewarded or punished for not going the extra mile. I think it's at a system-wide level, at a population level, it seems much more explicable that if capitalism as the driving force for society and maximizing shareholder value and eking out more and more profits or more and more productivity out of workers, if that's the thing that we're all optimizing for, it stands to reason that things are becoming less and less sustainable over time. If you define sustainable as there's cartilage in between your joints and it kind of cushions the blow and there's a little bit more buffer and a little bit more breathing room and a chance to lean back and think hard about the right way to do things, that's exactly what gets ironed out through optimization. We saw this with lean manufacturing and the super duper tight supply chains that would indeed be able to push through, turn over the inventory of a company as large as Apple on like a several day long basis, such that they didn't have any aged inventory anywhere, which means they didn't have to pay to store it, and they didn't have any waste, and that meant they could put out new products and not have a whole bunch of, excess crap to clear, right? But it also meant that as soon as anything fucking went wrong, there's no slack in the system, and now it's like, oh, one little tiny fuck up in the supply chain, and now there's just 0 iPhones. Sorry, right? COVID taught us that, like, a very specific lesson about that, but I don't think we have fully grappled with the fact that for the world to get really good at playing the game of min-maxing the stock market almost necessarily means that the space and the time to take care gets ironed out. And you might think, well, if you're a bureaucrat, or if you're in a cushy job and you're paid salary and you barely fill your day with work because no one's telling you what to do, and there's not enough to do, like, well, why don't they care? Why don't they do more? The answer to that is probably, like, the flip side, the consumer side of capitalism being really good at capitalizing is the middle class is under a lot of financial stress. College is more expensive. You want to send your kid to college, it's more expensive than ever, and the certainty that it's going to lead to a child who is not still living with you at 29 years old has never been lower. Inflation hurt a lot of families, just a real, on an emotional and visceral level, because it hits stuff like, gas and groceries and prices that people see all the time. The political environment, the sort of like just general vibe that, like, that we are exiting an era of unprecedented stability in exchange for something of higher volatility. The 2-income trap that, Elizabeth Warren very presciently wrote about, 30 years ago, and launched her public facing career of, well, if all the women start working, and now all we've done really is increase the competition for all families, because now you've got some that are making more money, which means that prices are going to go up because houses are going to be under more, the competition is going to expect it. And so now it's like, there's really no way to exist except for both, parents, if there are 2 parents, to be working to support childcare. And it's, unless you're very wealthy, right? So if you're well off, like if you're affluent, I think that you can write this blog post and be like, nobody fucking cares. I care a lot. And it's true, like me personally, I am affluent and I do care a lot. And yet at the same time, I feel surrounded by people who are incredibly stretched thin, who are under great duress to make rent payments. You become friends with a few Disney cast members, or people who work at Universal, or people who work at hotels, which are literally a majority of the people that I have met since moving here. The rents go up, wages don't keep up with that. The hotels now have figured out dynamic pricing. So, like, for example, some bean counter at hotels have figured, this is just a crystallized example of this, have figured out that, like, you could take a hotel, dynamically price it such that it's a non-linear scale. So it's like, well, when the hotel is fully occupied, our costs are very high because we have to fully staff all of the contingent workers that we have that are kind of just on call. And they might do some math and say, like, actually, our if we're pricing naively, like, our best case scenario from a customer satisfaction and an operating cost perspective is if we're at 60% occupied. And what we'll do is we'll just ratchet up the prices, such that we end up at 60% occupied, and dynamically price as if that was the ceiling. And we'll end up making the same amount of revenue, but our costs are basically flat. And all the hotels kind of like, it's really hard to get a $100 hotel room anymore, right? Even a $200 hotel room suddenly feels like a deal. But they go further, and really, you end up with like to become fully occupied means, and some of the hotels in my area, that means that like $1,400, $1,500, $2,000 a night for basic fucking rooms to actually fill out that last bit of inventory. What effect does that have for the workers, especially tipped staff? How, like, the valet guys who work for a subcontracting firm, like they get zero of the upside. In fact, they get cut more often, right? But they're going to get fewer tips because there's fewer cars, because the hotel's less full, even though it's making more money than ever. All of the wait staff, they're getting fewer shifts, and the shifts that they do get, the bar is less full because there's fewer guests. The guests might like it because experientially, like, the hotels are emptier and things are less crowded. But the price that they're paying to stay here is higher than ever. I think that if you are in a monoculture, if you're in a bubble and you don't see up close people who are like struggling right now, it would be very easy to say people sure seem to be caring less than they used to. But because I've been spending so much time in Japan over the course of 20 years now, I guess 19 and a half years, you can still spend 100 yen and get a green tea out of a vending machine. The 100 yen coin is still king in a lot of ways. But more often you got to spend 150 yen. More often you got to spend 180 yen, to get the same kind of product. If it is still 100 yen, you're getting a very, very thin, very watery green tea, and it's in a smaller bottle than ever before. The inflation has happened mostly through shrinkflation, and the reason is that Japanese wages have not increased one iota, but inflation, it's been not as bad as here, but it's still pretty bad. It's still impacting people. And my friends who were, they were middle class in Japan, like when I was in college and through my early, just general adult life. I've got a friend there who has had a broken water heater for like a year, and it would cost just enough to fix that he wouldn't be able to pay for, kids' school supplies or food. And having to make that choice, even though he's got a perfectly reasonable salary job. When I visit our friends who are like programmers in Japan, we talk about, not, of course, it always comes up that they can't easily come to the US or travel internationally because the yen is so depressed. But that also means imports are really expensive. And so when we talk about computers, some of them are switching to Linux because the price of Apple products have become so much more expensive. And programmers, it's not a ticket to upper middle class affluence like it can be in the United States. A lot of programmers still make between $30,000 and $45,000 full time in Japan, and that used to be enough in a lot of cases. But through various austerity measures that the LTP has put in place, gentle inflation this. I think of this kind of optimization that just the endless march of capitalism seems to have. And I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm just saying if you take a rubber band and you just keep stretching it a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further, it gets tighter and tighter and thinner and thinner. And eventually it reaches a breaking point. And that's why nobody cares. So anyway, it is a good essay. It's a good food for thought. But I'll be honest. One of the reasons that I moved to Orlando was people fucking care here. It's still unsustainable. I have friends who drive beaters who are, they work in the parks and they're performers, and they're doing it for the love of the game, and they're happy to be here, but they have to put up with all kinds of injustices, but they still have the care and they still care. But if I was in, BFE, Ohio, or just any old town, you wouldn't have the motivation of being convinced that you're in the most magical place on earth. Or being surrounded by this energy or this big nostalgia factory to keep you motivated. I don't blame people for not caring. I just am very grateful that I both get to care myself. I've got the privilege of care mad, but also I happen to be in a place and I've positioned myself in a place where, in spite of all of those obstacles, in the case of traveling in Japan, people still give a shit because their whole culture is caring. Their whole temperament and disposition is caring too much, often too much. And by being over here in the parks and in theme parkville, the mystique is so strong that the caring just kind of happens. And it's true that service is not what it used to be, right? That those stresses and those fractures, they become apparent from time to time, but it's still night and day, head and shoulders better than pretty much everywhere else that I go. Such that every time I leave Orlando, I feel I inevitably end up texting either Becky or my brother or a friend back home. It's like, why do I leave? Like, we live in paradise. So if you do move to Orlando, though, be mindful of which side of I-4 you're on. There's a post. I don't have a lot to talk about with this one. It's just a good kind of summary of by another blog post. Simon Willison, called Things We Learned About LLMs, Large Language Models in 2024. He did a similar post in 2023, and it's a good kind of synopsis and summary of sort of like the state of the art with AI. Like, what was this year all about? If you've been following along, none of these are incredible. None of these are really like blow away, like new things. This is just a summary of like year in review 2024. And this post and last year's post are both really helpful for just at a glance. Cause like the whole AI era already feels kind of like a blur, cause these products are just like the models move underneath you kind of invisibly. And so their capabilities, actually, this is similar to the full self-driving thing. A lot of Tesla drivers don't subscribe or don't use the full self-driving because the first version was a complete joke. It was totally unsafe. It was mostly a lot of heuristic-based C++ if-else code. And now it has so much data getting uploaded from these devices and these cameras and so much machine learning technology in there and like, the much better hardware that's able to like it's a different product now, but like from a user interface perspective, it looks the same. A lot of the AI stuff is the same. So I'm going to share that link in the show notes. It's something to read maybe while you grapple with the fact that TikTok is down. I could list that as a news story, but I think you probably know. And, it being January 19th, a little bit before noon, who the fuck knows where it's going to go? We can all imagine many different paths that this could take. It's not necessarily worth speculating. The number one thing I'm curious about is if the ban holds for a few days, I wonder what it's going to be like to be a middle school teacher when the kids can't just be one hand on their phone during class all day. What the withdrawal symptoms are going to be like for especially children who are addicted to it. Pretty much every other country, it seems like, that's banned TikTok. It seems like mostly it's just been YouTube Shorts and Instagram immediately pick up the same traction. It's interesting, right? Because the tension between free expression and being able to post stuff and also like the national security concerns of like, a lot of people threw away their votes in this last election over aggravation about Palestine. Like, there's a lot of evidence. And there's a national, director, I think it was a DNI report about the amount of pro-Palestine messaging that was being promoted through TikTok to sow discord. One could presume, when the founders were thinking about free speech, they were not necessarily thinking about like free coercive speech for foreign actors to be passively, promoting in our feeds. So I don't know what the right answer is other than quit Facebook, hit the gym, and lawyer up. So just do that and you'll be fine. An actual news item from actual publication, Ars Technica. This was posted in a bunch of places, but Ars usually has the best rundowns. So this fella in the UK has been trying to... He mined a bunch of Bitcoin in 2009, and he was trying to get his laptop back from a landfill, which one presumes, a decade hence, it would be deep down into that landfill. And so he made a lawsuit. He said, look, I mined a bunch of Bitcoin. It was on a laptop hard drive. It's got the private key. How the fuck? Like, okay, I get it. Like, crypto is confusing. And people want to have hardware hardware wallets and security and place to put these keys. But like, I still personally struggle with like, and why isn't 1Password good enough? Actually, write in if you know the answer. Like, if I had any crypto and I needed to store a key, I would put it in 1Password, and then I would be like, not a fucking dipshit, and just hand that over to anyone, or click on sketchy links, or paste that hardware keyboard into a website that could be getting, an XSS attack or something like that. Like, what the benefit of these hardware like, I suspect that it's just that crypto attracts tinfoil hat people who are susceptible to, first of all, the siren song of bullshit crypto claims about it, being a legitimate currency or some way to escape state control. And I suspect that same mindset is also very amenable to the idea that, like, yeah, you can't trust, cloud-based password managers. You got to use a hardware wallet, or you got to, write all this out in paper and make sure that you don't use too legible of a handwriting, or, like, the AI is going to OCR it, and never bring that piece of paper outside, or the spy satellites will watch it and then China will take all of the money. Like, you got to bury that paper. You keep it covered. Only walk outside with an umbrella while you're at it, and make sure that it's lined with the RFID blocking tape that we sell. Anyway, I seem to know a lot of people who were early in on Bitcoin, but, like, who claim to have, like, forgotten the password that would unlock, at this point, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of the Bitcoin. As a deflationary currency, it's like, it's designed to run out of new coins to mine within not too long from now, 6-7 years. You're so technologically advanced. You're so at the bleeding edge of technology that you were mining crypto in 2009, but, like, you never thought that a password manager would be a good idea. Like, I think I was on 1Password in 2008. I don't know, man. Like, I saw Bitcoin. I was like, that looks complicated. I don't know. Anyway, this guy claims that he has rights to this laptop, and that means that he should be able to go into a landfill and just dig up the laptop and find what is now considered to be worth $765 million. He started this lawsuit when it was only worth $77.5 million. So it's, 8,000 Bitcoins lying around there. And unfortunately, the judge has ruled that the landfill authority owns the trash. So, and there's a 6-year statute of limitations. So it's just, if you're going to crypto, try to be smarter than the grifters. Try to be, more intelligent than the people who will, tie up so much of their finances in something and then not bother to, make sure that they've got a way to access that shit. I don't know. Crypto is going to experience a renaissance because we're about to see what little regulation we have around it completely, evaporate. Andreessen Horowitz, as in the two fellas, they did a video about, why they supported Trump in the last election and why they think that, like, a regulation of crypto is really bad, when really what it is like, it's a get out of SEC free card for funders and startups and investors, especially when you're a VC, you are positioning yourself at the top of every Ponzi scheme. And so, like, having a financial vehicle that allows you to escape any responsibility for starting Ponzi schemes, when you can just tell people on their phones to sign up for this new coin that you're minting to support, I don't know, like a new retinal eye scanning AI technology, like what was a WorldCom or whatever. Like, people can just pump and dump to their heart's content. So I feel like we're not going to escape crypto anytime soon, and I'm sure that the valuations will keep going up because preppers love spending money on shit. But man, I've never been less interested. In other in news of where consensus seems to be changing on something genuinely, you might have heard of Havana syndrome. This is like the diplomats in Cuba following the Obama normalization with Cuba. Where people were reporting like really bad headaches, migraines, seemingly like inner ear damage from supersonic waves that reportedly Russian agents or somebody was like blasting at the U.S. embassy and the homes of diplomats and foreign service workers. And enough people had come forward with these symptoms that it was really weird to me that like the national intelligence apparatus and every report that had been put out was just like, yo, they crazy. That's just hysteria. And you'd see like a lot of the literati in the political press over the last few years be like, oh yeah, well that was clearly debunked because this report said so. Like Matt Iglesias being like, oh, there's no evidence. So it's like, every now and then there is, I think, there are like for example, in my high school, they built a brand new high school in like 2005 was the first year it was open. My brother was there and I was in college, and kids started passing out in class. It was brand new. It had that new school smell, and it happened like once and then twice and then 3 times. I don't know how many kids ultimately passed out, but eventually they temporarily closed the school to have like an audit done to be like, is there some weird noxious gas in here? And ultimately they didn't find anything. Now that doesn't mean that there wasn't proof. It just means there wasn't proof that there was something wrong. Like it could have been a meme, right? Kids could have heard about it, but like also like high school starts too early and maybe they got sleepy and maybe it was conscious or maybe it was just like a kid falls asleep and then suddenly it's like they've got a great cover story built in, which is like, oh, it's the gases, the vapors. But this Havana syndrome thing is just too fucking weird. And like a lot of these people are like still on, like disability and haven't been able to come back to work for years. So if it was just some sort of hysteria or all in their heads, like that's an impressive amount of psychosomatic trauma to just have, quote unquote made up. So anyway, I was always like, look, I'm a lab leak hypothesis guy. Like, do I think that the coronavirus was like, accelerated in a Wuhan lab and broke out? Or do I think it was like a pangolin or something in a wet market? Like I'm actually, I'm a lab leak truther, and I have been from the first minute because it just seemed like too many coincidences. So you telling me like, hey, we've got foreign service people working in Cuba, and then they happen in a couple other countries that are both known as places that Russia has a lot of operations and a lot of interests. I don't know. It seems like they're, it always seemed real to me. So anyway, it looks like finally, after some resistance by Biden administration officials being like, I don't know, this seems real, that they're finally admitting that it seems real. So if you're in Havana and you start to get the syndrome, blame Russia, I guess. Meta, we're just continuing the lightning round. Meta, let's see if I can pull over. Yes. A couple different links, I suppose. Ars Technica has one where it's just sort of just the facts, ma'am, of Meta's killing its diversity programs, citing that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, has become too charged. It's interesting that we live in an era where if you successfully politicize something, you also neutralize it. As soon as like half the country decides they don't want to do something, you no longer have a plurality of support for something. And the backlash effect of just look at Bud Light, right? Like if you'd gone back 5 years, 10 years and told me Modelo was going to be the #1 beer in America because a transgender woman was in a Bud Light ad, like I would totally have believed you. And then that's what happened. He also in a separate New York Post article, and now it's the New York Post, so who knows, but apparently when Zuckerberg was yucking it up with Trump down in Mar-a-Lago, he threw Sheryl Sandberg under the bus as being the reason for all the DEI crap, and that he's finally unshackled and can say what he wants. And in so doing has also really loosened up the political speech suppression that you see on Instagram and especially Threads, where I think Threads had a huge opportunity when it launched. If only they had not downranked anything news, anything contemporaneous, anything political, I think that they really could have given Elon and X a run for their money because unlike X, it had the virtue of the pages loading. But because it was a heated election season, the whole political press, all of the journalists were like, well, you're downranking news. Like, why would I spend time in Threads? In fact, now Blue Sky is taking off. So I think like all these things happen in a piece. But the fact that Meta killed its diversity programs and that we're seeing similar kind of the alignment, right? Of like, well, you got to play ball with the Trump administration anyway. Somebody asked me last night at the birthday party, they're like, why is it that like tech is cozying up to Trump? And I think that the at some point the alliance between left of center politicians and the tech world, it flipped, the polarity flipped. And when I went to visit Google in 2007, like they had so many pictures on the wall of here's Al Gore here, and here's all these Democratic bundlers and like luminaries and stuff, and all these people who visited the campus and spoken to our staff, done a special Google talk or whatever. I think the bloom came off the rose a bit, first from the center left people, because they realized like, oh wow, like these platforms are, open the door to misinformation, right? And then it was first around the election, the Russia stuff. And then it was like during COVID, it's like, oh shoot, like, like it's the anti-vax crap and all of the conspiracy theories, all of these different sort of like the pressures around the type of speech that their algorithms happen to promote, which is like very outrage, very, like anger bait. And a lot of that stuff tends to agitate more like right wing people who have like the authoritarian top down mindset. So like, I think that like partly the Democrats like left like started pressuring or distancing themselves or finding themselves in opposition to just like what technology was, but much more literally, the Biden administration's like decision to like let's regulate trusts, the DOJ lawsuit against Apple, the judgment against Google that like right now as it stands, Google has to come up with a plan for how to like divest itself of Android and or Chrome and or search. To break it up. Now that probably won't happen, and certainly because of the election, it's less likely to happen. But you ask like, hey, why is tech turned on? And it's like the DEI stuff is also just like a huge. I hate to say it because like I actually really, really like the idea of us all getting better, but from the perspective of an executive trying to run a business, a huge distraction. Like now, in addition to running a business in a competitive environment, I also have to meet all of these other goals that are orthogonal to. It's just like, like how many stories have we heard about Microsoft doing the like stupid thing with respect to security? Like security doesn't make them more money. Obviously, PR disasters cost them some amount of money, but sometimes the cost that is incurred by a security fiasco is still less than the cost of fixing it at the root. And so they make that trade all the time. So I suspect that the impatience that leadership has with the increasingly, demanding activist left during 2020, 2021, 2022, I was at the time saying like, man, like you gotta find a way to attenuate these signals or else like you're just going to create a huge fucking backlash. And I got a lot of heat for that internally and without. And I hate to say I told you so, but this is exactly what fucking happens. So we're just seeing a thermostatic effect. And now we're just in a case of, I guess we'll see where it goes. But Zuckerberg looks like a fucking loser, by the way, with his big t-shirts and his hair. Speaking of killing programs, Google is killing the ability to use google.com unless you have JavaScript enabled. So it used to be the case that you could go to google.com like it was a website, type in a search query, hit enter, and then have it like if you have JavaScript, it does all the fancy stuff, right? Like it like fills in the next set of results, it autofills them in, and then you click a thing, and then it's not a hard page load or anything. Like the results just magically populate, right? That's the Google experience as we've known it for over a decade, probably over 15 years. But because Google is like a technologist first Linux neckbeard joint from the start, it would play by pre-JavaScript rules of you go to the website, you type in the Google query, you hit search. Search was an actual button that you could press, and it would load another page, and then you'd have 10 results or 30 results per page, and you have the little remember the little O's were like the paginators. I don't even know if it's still. Last time I've lasted more than 5 Google results before giving up on Google was quite a long time ago, I guess. You could do all that throughout Google's history without having JavaScript turned on. Why that was significant was it meant that you could use more accessible browsers. It meant that you could use browsers that had worse hardware on them. But importantly, it meant that you could scrape fucking Google. It meant that you could write a program that could easily and conceivably download the Google page, navigate it, parse the links, and then, but that's a way to bypass ads, right? And by programmatically using Google at all, it allows third parties to scrape it and to build their own indexes at scale, which Google does not want to do because that's their special sauce. And so, of course, like that tension's always been there, and they've always had sort of all kinds of anti-scraping, technologies and middlewares to try to prevent this. But they finally given up the ghost and said, now you just need to have JavaScript running. And I don't love it. It's not, whatever, like most websites require you have JavaScript running. The things that I write require you to have JavaScript running. So it's not like this is just a changing of it's a sign of the times. It's like, okay, well, we are now in the era that the web is just an application platform, and the primary benefit of these fancy applications is to build a bigger wall around the garden. It's not necessarily to improve the user experience, because nothing is lost by they claim to, like, you get worse search results when JavaScript isn't enabled. It's like that the server is the one doing that. They're acting like this is a user experience win, but they really are taking something away and calling it better. So I just want to note that. That's too bad. I will miss the old fashioned, I could use the Lynx browser in my terminal and navigate Google and search for results over SSH, which is a thing that I did in school often from my Linux workstation when I was in the lab. As we continue this potpourri of shitty tech news, the CEO of Sonos was forced to step down, as well as the head of product. I've had various Sonos devices. I did when I was in Columbus. I had a home theater setup where you had like the two. Back then, they were like Sonos ones that were the side channels, the bar in the middle, and then the subwoofer, which is a very, very expensive subwoofer, even by Sonos standards, and their speakers are all expensive because it had the force canceling like design where it would push up and down at the same level, at the same time, at the same frequency or amplitude, I guess. And so those waves would cancel out, and so you'd still get the thump, but it wouldn't literally shake the floor. Really good system, good audio. For years, Sonos's biggest problem is that their audio products are so good and so long lasting that they've got a fixed number of fans, basically, like of Sonos heads, but they don't need to replace their hardware very often. And so, the diminishing returns of how good a speaker can get, or how good the syncing of the audio between different rooms of the household can get, is such that once you've got all the speakers that you need and you're not going to move house anymore, like there's probably move house. Is that a Britishism? Why'd I say that? Write in if that's a Britishism. It's a hard business to run, and they wanted to enter the headphone market because that's where there's it's a much more disposable product category, right? Headphones take wear and tear. They've got lithium ion batteries in them. They eventually wear out. And in order for the headphone to work, they had to update their app, and their app is it's a whole category of apps. Like there's certain things that just like existed before AirPlay 2, right? Existed before Apple streaming music. And so the app is sort of this dinosaur of a controller for music, and it can integrate to various music services, and you can select which rooms things are playing in. And don't get me wrong, like they've got their own protocols and they are very good, and people who love Sonos swear by it. But every time I've had Sonos devices, like I have never wanted to use that app. It has always been a garbage piece of shit. It's a junky UX. It always was. It always is. And maybe it's more reliable, but it was never my experience. The app is the place you go to set up a new Sonos device. And then when you move it and you want it to like recalibrate its, what do they call it? True tone, where like you walk around with the phone and wave it around so that it can use the microphone from the phone to kind of like synchronize distance between the speakers and so forth. So, but apparently Sonos people will use the app and actually use it in earnest, which I've never understood. I'm just grateful that I never had that workflow. It's like AirPlay 2 is more than good enough for me because I'm just blasting audio at all of these HomePods anyway, and HomePods are not Sonos machines. So I've got a Move 2, which is a nice speaker. It's a nice big boy. It's like an ottoman. It's a small ottoman-sized portable speaker. and it rests on a little ring that charges over USB, so you don't have to plug it and unplug it. We just pick it up out of the cafe. We can go down to take it to the pool outside. It's a great time. So they wanted to release these headphones, and so they put out a huge rewrite of the app. They rushed it because the headphones were launching, and the old app wouldn't support the headphone pairing or whatever there was about the stupid fucking headphone, the bespoke headphone experience, which of course can't just be a Bluetooth headphone anymore. Not if you're Sonos. So they rush out this new app, and the CEO did some tap dancing about, kind of basically like the Apple style #courage about it. And the app had a lot of problems, and fortunately I didn't experience any of them. I downloaded the app, or I had it anyway. I think I was on the new app because I just gotten the Move 2 speaker. And it was like, it was enough. The setup worked and whatever. I didn't think about it. People were really mad though. And Sonos people, like the one thing that they love about Sonos and would always brag is the reliability. So I get it. And none of them wanted fucking headphones from Sonos anyway, I don't think. So yeah, CEO's gone. Apparently it's like people are talking about this now like it's the fucking like McDonnell Douglas takeover of Boeing or something, that the current crop of executives there just didn't understand what Sonos was all about. But like, to be fair, Sonos is a feature, not a product in the current era where everything's abstracted to like, the big 5 tech companies all offer all of the same things, and the kinds of like level of platform integrations that they can offer is so compelling that like, what is so like, if Sonos isn't going to sell to Apple, what are they doing? What it would be really difficult to be the CEO of Sonos regardless. So he's gone, new guy's in, he's saying all the right things, but like their lane is so fucking narrow. Like what is a Sonos comeback story after this debacle look like, right? Where the fans have turned on you, and really the only reason your business was doing well was people had an irrational level of love and respect for you and your reliability and your brand power. Now that that's gone, what do you got? What do you got? Because the products themselves were actually not worth the price that you were charging. And the structural and like, just sort of systemic problems that you're facing are worse now than they were a year ago before you burned all this clock on nonsense. Like, I think Sonos is publicly traded. Sell your Sonos, please. This is financial advice. Go fucking sell it. I am not an investor, and this does not constitute financial advice. Speaking of financial advice, the NVIDIA came out with its 5000 series of graphics cards. Well, it announced them at their keynote at CES. And NVIDIA, they're on top of the world. They talk about stock prices. They're enjoying the peak of their bubble. I keep telling people, like, especially people who have invested in NVIDIA, just like individual stock picking. Like, the reason that NVIDIA is doing well right now is they were so fortunate to ride the crypto wave where, yes, it just turns out that like general purpose GPUs are useful. Like multiplying matrices is a really handy operation to be able to do at scale for lots of different, Ponzi scheme adjacent technology ventures. So like the crypto scheme, they take off. NVIDIA's all their graphics cards are sold out everywhere because everyone wants to mine their cryptos. Now between proof of stake and like the subsiding, NFT craze and everything like that just as that starts to ebb, the AI boom starts taking off, and now everyone is the H100 server rack graphics, AI chip is the coin of the realm, and all of these, companies, VCs are basically bartering in H100 access, and all the cloud the cloud platforms are hoovering up all of them. And so NVIDIA was able to very like gracefully navigate from the crypto bubble to the AI. We'll see if it's a bubble. And so they're on top of the world. And they're in such a dominant position, and AI will continue to exist, that there's going to be a lot of winners and losers in terms of applications for AI. But if you look at the EPS, if you look at the trajectory of the NVIDIA stock, like there's a sickness in the brains of finance pros that think numbers can only go up. They're just drawing in crayon the extrapolation of the rest of the line. And I suspect that this is there's just not enough money at the lower levels in the value chain. Like the cloud providers are eventually going to have to turn a profit because they're all publicly traded too. It's hard to imagine everyone's going to be replacing all of these server racks like every single fucking year. And if they're doing that, you're going to have people like Amazon like make their own AI chips. So anyway, NVIDIA, like, not that they're on shaky ground, but like they're really riding high. You know, you got Jensen, the co-founder, in his shiny leather jackets and stuff. And he's always been a little bit of a character. The thing that, you know, them making discrete graphics chips for computers so that gamers could play games was their thing. And crypto was seen as a big distraction, and that they took their eye off the ball. And they, you know, the 2000 series of cards was kind of mediocre in a lot of ways. The 3000 series of cards adds, you know, enhances the ray tracing capabilities of the cards, and in general, performance is fine. Like, they don't have a lot of competition right now. Intel just put out one that's like a decent budget option that's surprisingly performant and competent, given that it's Intel, a company that shouldn't exist. The 5000 series of cards, they did a very well produced keynote. They showed a lot of unlabeled bar charts comparing it to the 4000 series of cards that they're replacing. They're coming in at prices that are lower than people expected. They're making bold claims like that the 5070 provides 4090 levels of performance, where the last two digits indicate the sort of the tier of the card. So like the card that in the new generation that's two rungs down from the top of the previous generation, that those are going to be somehow equivalent. And when you listen to them talk, of course they're talking about because of the AI, because the AI compute in these new chips is way higher. And we have these cool tricks. The two primary tricks are upscaling using AI. So you actually rasterize, you render the game at a low resolution, like call it 1080p. And then you use machine learning and a model that's kind of embedded and ships with the drivers to upscale it to 4K or whatever it is. And if you just do that naively, you end up with a picture that looks really sharp and like a lot of jagged edges and stuff. But if you do it based on like, you know, a lot of training data that says this is what the game should look like, or what a game should look like at 4K in this particular genre, in this particular circumstance, you know, like it can actually do really clever things, like make sure that the foliage ends up in front of the light or whatever it is. So that's called DLSS, and DLSS 4 is even more advanced. And it's a whole cadre of features. One of the other big kind of leg of the stool here is frame gen or frame generation. And that is, you know, the name of the game for graphics card is really two things. You have a frame buffer putting out a certain amount of resolution to a display, and then you do that a certain number of times a second, you know, in hertz. So for a long time, getting a game to run stable at 60 hertz or 60 frames per second, that was the gold standard. And if you could do that, you're great. But now modern day displays not only have very, very high refresh rates, but they have connections to the graphics card that can sync that refresh rate so that the graphics card can communicate to the monitor and say, like, let's say I've got a monitor that has, some of these are nuts. Like there's one, I think that was at CES, that can do 4K at 240 hertz or 1080p at 480 hertz. So like we're talking about screens that can refresh all of the pixels on the screen like absurdly fast. But the card can now communicate over the, you know, DisplayPort connection. It can say like, hey, I'm going to be outputting at 275 or some arbitrary frequency or frame rate. And the display can anticipate that, and then the two can basically be in lock sync. So there's lock sync. So there's no tearing or anything like that. It's all very, very neat. So frame generation, where the graphics card will interpolate. So if you're drawing, like, let's say like it's only rasterizing like 60 frames a second, and you want to display 120 frames. You want it to feel that much smoother, that much faster. Now, whether or not people can actually perceive stuff faster than 60 or 90 or 120 frames per second, I don't know. It would be really interesting to see somebody do a side-by-side study and see what portion of the population can even fucking tell. But if you want to be able to say that you're putting out 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second, just like DLSS takes lower resolution images and upscales them so you can say or feel like you're playing a 4K game and have it look mostly right, even though it's not the game anymore. It's an imagined, it's an AI fever dream of what the game should look like at 4K. That's heavily informed by, tweaks between the developers and drivers and yada yada. The frame generation side is sort of like the same thing, but for motion. So it's like, all right, so it's a 60 frames per second game. That's what we're rendering at. So that's the work that the computer has to do, is just to get those 60 frames out the door. And then DLSS, the sort of AI piece of the pipeline, will interpolate like imagine what the frame would look like in between, each of the other frames. So interleaved between each frame is a frame that I just made up, and then I've doubled the frame rate, and that's 2x frame generation. Well, these new 5000 cards are going to support 4x frame generation. So in between each frame, you've got now, what would that be? 3 more fucking frames that are also made up until the next real frame. And it interpolates between the two, and it adds a certain amount of latency, right? Because you want to know what's the next frame before you put it out. But that latency now is like, it used to be that the latency was slow enough because the pipeline would have to run and so forth, and it would take longer. And so like you'd end up with the sort of phenomenon of like you move the controller a little bit and then like it's just a little laggy or motion blurry, like it's not as snappy. Music and rhythm games, like it would be a game over because when you tap the button, it wouldn't time up with what you're seeing on the screen. The latency is apparently back down. And so like they're bragging now like, oh yeah, you have incredible performance at 240, 480 frames per second. But they're not like, gamers look at that who are hardcore gamers who want to like there is a dick measuring contest aspect to PC games where it's like, if I make a custom PC, I'm trying to maximize the rasterization performance of the graphics. Because all of the device components that I'm picking, whether it's, the motherboard, so like the memory bandwidth is maxed out, the particular chip that I get so that any games that I play are not, bottlenecked from the CPU, right? Like the amount of like sort of like game world processing and the AI movement of all the NPCs and all that. And then you get this graphics card and you want just a big beefy thing that can multiply a shit ton of matrices simultaneously. This feels like cheating. This feels like, I'm not really rendering 4K, I'm rendering 1080p, and then it's making up some stuff. It feels like, oh, okay, well, I'm not really running at 60 frames per second or 100. I'm not really running 120 frames. I'm running 60 and sort of doubling them in this kind of goofy way. And because these upscalers and frame gen, techniques are not perfect, that they do make mistakes, a certain amount of veracity is lost for sure. And like these things are getting better, and that's nice. But like I said, the dick measuring aspect of like, why are people really in this racket to begin with? That is completely undercut. And so like NVIDIA finds itself like in this like marketing problem where all they really want to work on is the AI stuff and the diminishing returns of like making something that can multiply matrices faster and like introduce new shaders and technologies that actually make games look better, not just, easier to artificially accelerate. They're clearly like, that's not where their attention is. Their attention is on building like, neural language processors and rather than actually improve these cards' performance versus the previous generation, it is increasingly looking like, and once you ignore the bar charts and dig into like what's actually in these cards, the number of actual cores that like go to the graphics processing stuff is like pretty mild. Some of them are flat over the previous generation. Now, granted, like the prices aren't super high, but I'm a guy who fucking loves to upgrade shit. I have a 3090. It's a great card. I in fact, my Indiana Jones, I'm running at 4K, 60 frames a second. My projector only supports 60 frames a second, only supports 4K. Nevertheless, when the 5090 is getting announced, I'm like, I want that because it's new and it's faster. And like, I have a homeopathic sort of benefit, like something in the air that just makes me sleep better at night, knowing that my performance is the best that I can possibly get. I would have better path tracing. I'd have better lighting maybe, right? And while that is true, I can still drag up almost every single game slider all the way to the right. But then you layer on this kind of stuff and the fact that the performance actually isn't, the rasterization performance isn't better. It just does, it cheapens it somehow. So I don't know, like when we talk about AAA gaming and how fucked it is structurally, one wonders really whether or not this market's even big enough to worry about. NVIDIA clearly doesn't care. It's like sort of like Intel just has this desktop PC gaming market anymore. And it's like this tiny, tiny little rounding error in terms of their overall businesses. So go check out the 5000 series cards, but I suspect that aftermarket 4000 and 3000 cards are still going to be very valuable. Because it's not like, the average card is like a 2000 series or 3000 series, like an older card, and developers need to hit as many gamers as possible. So no one's actually taking advantage of these advanced features unless you got some sort of marketing deal with NVIDIA to turn them on so that they could, run their ads. Sorry, that was a lot. If you're not into, I really should figure out how to add chapters to this thing. If you don't care about GPU shit, and I wish I didn't. But anyway, all that to say, I am personally really proud of myself that I reached the conclusion that I have no business upgrading my 3090 to one of these new cards. That I actually actively chose, like, I'm happy with what I have. And that's such an unusual sensation for me to feel that I am noting it to say, look at me. Look at me. Also in gaming news, it has been rumored for a while. It's actually kind of sad because there's been, for Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which is a very, very popular game. It's been launched on every single platform. There's been a long running 10-year plus mod project by the community to port the Oblivion game, the game prior to Skyrim, into the Skyrim engine. And they're still working on it. It's still kind of in this flux state. Well, there's a new leak that Bethesda GameWorks is literally actually contracting a real studio to kind of do the same thing and remake Oblivion in a modern game engine with, kind of creature comforts and other sort of updates to make the game more playable today, which personally I think is brilliant. One, because I actually enjoyed Oblivion more than Skyrim. I know it's an unpopular opinion. But two, their output has been really bad. They've got Starfield, which was underwhelming. Fallout sort of in a situation of flux. Like Bethesda takes a really long time to get games out the door, and Oblivion is sitting right there as being like a really good game that just needs a little bit of spit polish to get over the finish line. So apparently, this has been rumored for a little bit. A whole bunch of leaks came out indicating this is actually happening. And so currently slated to release in June 2025. So if you've never played Oblivion before, stay tuned. Keep an eye out for that. This is not the Skyblivion remake. This is like an actual product that will hopefully be as good as the thing that the random fans throw together. Also in the news, you may have seen, so that reason I titled this episode Super Switch is, as a kid who grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I had a Nintendo, and then I was very excited to get the Super Nintendo. I was really hoping that Nintendo would have the amount of capital C cool in them to make the Switch 2 just the Super Switch. Now, that creates several problems. And I get why they didn't do it, right? But they put out their unveil trailer. It's 2.5 minutes long. It's easy to find. You'll never guess, but it looks like a Switch. It's a little bit bigger. The thumbsticks are less bad. Instead of having rails that the Joy-Cons don't get Joy-Cons now, the rails that the Joy-Cons slip into are now, they click in through magnets, and there's a little button to kind of detach them. The kickstand is less bad, right? The hardware, of course, is going to be incrementally better, but it's not going to be anything that you want to write home about. But the reason that they didn't call it the Super Switch is that they finally have a hit on their hands. They want to just make it crystal clear that this is not the same thing, that this is the next, okay, grandma, this is the one you buy, right? Because Nintendo has named things so foolishly from a market perspective over the years. In ancient history, when the Super Nintendo was released, there was genuine market confusion. Why doesn't this play my Nintendo games, and vice versa? They had to market it as because people had not experienced a new console generation, most of them. And so they had to go and educate this is actually a different product. It enables new experiences. And the number of early 90s infuriated moms that were being interviewed in newspapers and local news of I just paid hundreds of dollars for and granted, in inflation adjusted terms, they were right to complain. And now Nintendo's throwing all that away, and I need to buy a whole new system just to play the latest games. And my kids are, begging for it and whatnot. Like, the fact it was named Super Nintendo was just one more barrier. Then, of course, they named the next thing Nintendo 64, which has the virtue of having a number at the end, I guess. Then the GameCube, which is its own thing, and maybe that was the smartest name of them all, just because it was a totally different brand, and it did fine. And then you have the Wii, but then things, the wheels really fell off the wagon, because in 2012 when they released the Wii U, and it looks just like a Wii, but just on its side, and it has this tablet thing. Like, people are all in the box is mostly showing off the tablet because that's the interesting looking thing. Even people who are relatively plugged in could look at that in a Target and be like, so this is just a tablet for my Wii? Like, I don't use my Wii anymore because of, it's collecting dust or whatever. It was unclear that it was a new console, and it still had the Wiimotes. It was a absolute nightmare, and easily, the worst performing console that Nintendo ever produced. At the same time, they had the DS and the 3DS systems, and those ones, they had similarly nonsensical names. Let's see if I can name them all. So then there was the Nintendo DS, and then the DS Lite, which was smaller and square, more square edges. Kind of like the clamshell iBook to the squared off iBook G4, similar aesthetic. Then they had, was it the DSi, the internet connected DS? And then they had, I think that might have been it. Was the new DS the DS or the 3DS? The new Nintendo DS might have been the last one. Yeah. And it just said new in front, like New Super Mario Brothers, and that was nonsense. Then, of course, they had the 3DS, and then they had the 2DS. It's, all right. So, look, Nintendo's bad at names. Satoru Iwata, he was a programmer who worked his way up to CEO. Very fun guy, very brilliant in so many ways, but not like a finance head and not like a marketing guru like the current Furukawa-san at Nintendo sure seems to be. Like he's a plant. Like the shareholders love him because he just prints money. The Switch is making tons and tons of money. He just playing it safe. It's the Switch 2, Nintendo Switch 2. It's got a big fucking 2 on it. It's a big old gaudy, ugly ass number 2. It's like, you're going to look at that dock and you're going to be like, man, which Switch is this? And then you're not going to wonder anymore. So, it's disappointing to me as a lifelong Nintendo fan that it's so boring, but from the walls closing in on the gaming industry and Nintendo kind of having the last good thing going in terms of being able to sell products and make a profit, it's probably for the best. It's probably the best for everyone that this is a very predictable, perfunctory release. And the fact that they've also spawned this entire cottage industry of other people making handhelds that sort of imitate the Switch. They clearly hit on something in that initial design, and it'll be interesting. It's interesting now, but it'll be interesting to go back in 10, 15, 20 years and see what was the history of and the influence that that particular design of that initial Switch, when released in 2016, what it had on the broader handheld gaming market, to whatever extent that still exists from then. Let's see. Let's skip over the next couple little things. We'll end on a note that this isn't real news. This is Reddit news. I just loved this post. The shot chaser aspect of this Reddit post was posted to the Apple Watch sub a few days ago. Title is, I got 202 beats per minute at one point and regularly rest at 100 beats per minute. Is my Apple Watch defective? Let's keep reading. I really don't understand, but ever since I got my Apple Watch, I've been seeing some really weird heart trends. When I stand up or go for a walk, my heart rate raises well over 100 beats per minute. I also get 110 to 120 while resting occasionally. You can see my range while doing different activities in the picture attached. At one point, I was not exercising. I reached 202 beats per minute. I know that's absolutely not normal, but I felt normal at the time I recorded it, and I was genuinely so confused after. At the time I'm writing this, I've been laying down for 30 minutes and I've done no activities that would warrant a high heart rate. However, I somehow got 103 beats per minute. I'm in good shape and I exercise often. I don't understand where this is coming from. Took an ECG a few times and almost all of them came out as high heart rate. I have a Series 5, which is an older model, but it's in perfectly good condition. I've checked to make sure I'm wearing it correctly, and I've cleaned the heart rate sensor several times, but that's not the problem. Any tips? I have been known to experience some, just like I said earlier, like most people, when they have a computer issue, they blame themselves. I tend to err on the opposite side, which is what I think makes me interesting to some people, is that I'm so quick to blame the computer that I will go digging and try to figure it out. But it can sometimes lead to me complaining and blaming the computer a little bit too proactively, right? And now that like our devices are so integrated and aware of, like with these health sensors, the fact that RHT123X, this user, could go to the trouble of the screenshots, the documentation, the multi-day wondering about this, the posting to Reddit, the responding to some comments in Reddit, and never at any point think, what if I just took my middle finger and my index finger and I put them, on my neck, near that artery, and I just counted. Like, I would hope most people who are adults will have been taught at some point in their life how to measure one's pulse. Get a rough idea. Did he ever do that? I assume he did, right? Because of course, like if my heart rate was 202 beats per minute, I've already outed myself as having a low heart rate privilege. But if my heart rate was 202, or the app was saying, it's like, you've got arrhythmia. You got to go to the doctor and be like, well, look at this fucking thing. This is obviously broken. So I just assumed like he must have checked his heart rate. But I was like, you know what? I bet he didn't. I bet he just rushed to the conclusion that his Apple Watch is defective. And you read a bunch of the comments, and they're like, I think your shit's fucked. Are you sure have you checked your heart rate? He replied later on in the thread. To find it, it was so buried in the Reddit does a bad job generally with the folding comments, but like it wasn't. His replies only got his personal update explaining what the fuck happened in this post that has 412 upvotes only has 2 upvotes at present. Where he comes back and actually says what the fuck was happening. He says, update. Hello, everyone. Still alive. I genuinely feel stupid for not checking my pulse manually first thing to make sure it was correct. I did so a few months back and it was around 80 beats per minute, I believe. So I didn't think there was any cause for concern nor a problem and assumed my watch was just wrong. I did one just now, and it was almost exactly the same as the reading on my Apple Watch. So I know now that it's not my watch that's defective, but rather my heart. I did multiple ECGs as mentioned in the post, and they gave similar results. I don't have health insurance, unfortunately, but I will arrange an appointment with the doctor as soon as I can to sort this out. Parentheses, might be costly. A sibling of mine does have POTS, P-O-T-S. I'm unsure if that has any correlation, but I'm just putting it out there in case I end up being diagnosed with the same condition. Thank you for your insights, and I apologize for not taking some basic measures prior to making the post. I want to clarify that I do know how to take a manual pulse and that I'm not usually this dumb. I really am sorry. Yeah, so I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you don't know how to measure your heart rate, Google how to measure your heart rate. And if your watch is telling you that you are going to die at any moment, maybe get a second opinion before you post it to Reddit. I don't know what to say. I'm not an expert, but that one jumped off the page. Every now and then I like reading something like that to be like, you know what? I am pretty fucked in the head, but at least I'm not that guy. All right. That's it for the news. So last time around, I may have oversold the Netflix series The Diplomat. I should have been clearer that it's not good. It's like fine. It's TV. I do have a big boy crush on Kerry Russell. That's true. But I was, kind of selling it as such. And watch it. If you like political, if you liked West Wing or Madam Secretary, that kind of thing, it's good. It's fine. Season 2, wrapped that up with Becky. And it was it ended with one of the best cliffhangers. First of all, Allison Janney shows up. She who played C.J. Craig in West Wing. And she's wonderful. And yeah, the finale really sets the stage for some cool shit. I think it's a short season, like 6 episodes, maybe 6 or 8. But they've already renewed for season 3, so I'm excited. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. One thing I did spoil myself. I read a book. I read a book. No, I listened to a book. Don't get ahead of yourselves. I listened to a book called Conclave by Robert Harris. 2-3 years ago. It was one of the games I would play like while playing No Man's Sky in VR. I should get back into that. I really wish I had a good VR setup for gaming right now. So I listened to this book because Robert Harris wrote a trilogy of books about ancient Rome, starring Cicero, and they were 3 of my favorite books. Like absolutely fantastic trilogy. I should go back and check that out. Imperium, I think, might have been the first one, and he wrote a book called Conclave about like a modern era. Changing of the guard with the Pope dying, and then the conclave, and the curia or whatever, the cardinals all vote and have to come up to a 2/3, vote on who the next Pope hat is going to be. And I thought, it was a pretty good book. It's like a little bit of palace intrigue. It's like a little bit of politics. It's, I would say a little bit like, I don't know. There's a handful of twists and turns that I think are genuinely thought provoking, but it's a slow burn as a book. It's like, okay, and as a book, it's very, there's not a lot of texture in it. It's just sort of like, and then this happened, and then this conversation happened. I don't remember it being like particularly like artful, but the film version, which is currently streaming on Peacock, I want to say. I think very good. So the film came out. It was by the guy who did All Quiet on the Western Front, which was also surprisingly good and punched way above its weight. And this movie has like 3 sets. It's like, it's visually not the most exciting thing in the world. And there's a couple shots that are really beautiful, but like, I don't know, like all movies look the same now because digital cinematography has gotten to be like the baseline level of quality is higher, so that even art house films, even if they're shot on an iPhone, still like look pretty good most of the time. I noticed like this one isn't like, this one looks weirdly bad, like they were just shooting in genuinely dim environments. So like, not to say things are blurry or out of focus, but like, yeah, I've got a pretty good rig, and like it did not look great. But the writing was fantastic. And there's a couple of really great speeches throughout. So if you've got Peacock, which you do if you have Instacart Plus, if you got Peacock, check it out. I was very impressed, and it was, the reason that I'm sharing it is it was a rare movie to end, a non-blockbuster big movie, where at the end Becky and I are like, I'm just really glad I watched that. Like, not to say like the message is incredible, but it was, yeah, it was just a window to a story that was like thought provoking. Like, what would the impact of the world be if this particular series of events unfolded? And there were a handful of, you call it moralizing or whatever, but is it Ralph Fiennes or Ralph Fiennes? I've heard it pronounced both ways recently. He plays the main cardinal dude who's administering this whole, the black smoke, white smoke charade. And he gives a speech in the beginning, and like as a little homily. And he says that, to his fellow cardinals, that the gravest sin is certainty. That being so sure of yourself or sure that things had to be one way is a good thing to talk about before voting on multiple rounds of potentially having to change your vote several times depending on how things pan out. And that little speech is like one of the best. It's right up there with the Bill Pullman and Independence Day for me as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or whatever the hell it was. In terms of just like rousing, like hell, like when you think about it, like that certainty is really at the heart of like a lot of problems, like the lack of flexibility in people's minds, the inability even to, when things are out of your control, just to take a let's see approach. Yeah, a good movie, good influence. So check out Conclave if you're so inclined. Severance season 2 started. That just came out Friday. Becky and I hoovered that episode up in the first like 15 minutes of it landing on the Apple TV. They're just doing one episode at a time, which makes sense. Now that it's made a splash. The cast did a weird pop-up store thing at the New York store where they set up a fake Severance in the Severance office cubicle orientation inside of the cube, above ground at the Manhattan store, or is it Fifth Avenue? I don't know New York shit. But anyway, like they had the actual cast there and they were like pretending and play acting out, like a day in the office as a macro data refiner or whatever. And so that was a cool stunt. This is Adam Scott I've always loved him as an actor. I thought Parks and Rec might be the biggest thing that he ever did. And so to see him as the star in a show that's taken so seriously, Ben Stiller, every episode that he's directed has just been lights out phenomenal. And the season 2 opener of Severance is no different. It's just, they're doing stuff that is really novel and really special. The comedic, they find levity in things that are objectively unacceptable. Like in this case, the funniest parts of this opener are surrounding child labor, the forced the conscription of a child into office work, presume in a sense against her will, right? Like, Becky took some offense when I was like, that is really fucking funny. And like, the thing is, like, it is funny. They make it funny. In a sense, I had this epiphany while we were watching that like Severance is kind of like the opposite of The Good Place, because the conceit of The Good Place, which is Michael Schur show, is a really fantastic show. The conceit is like, all these people died. They go into like what they think is heaven, turns out to be hell, and back and forth and so forth. And like, they over the course of the series, everyone's awareness continues to expand of like the scope of what is life, what is existence. And everything keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more infinite. Whereas in Severance, the idea that you would have a part of yourself that would be blocked off and isolated. And as time runs out, like you getting permanently retired, you go into an elevator one day and then you just never come out again. Right. And that's death. The feeling like the opposite of The Good Place, where they find humor in the absurdity of the situation that they're in, and that keeps things light enough, but you're literally going down into this like, contraction of awareness. And that's where they find the tension. So I'm just mad. Maybe I'm thinking of that old 90s game that was like sort of like called Afterlife, where you had like a heaven mode and a hell mode, and you're trying to do like a Sim City of heaven and hell simultaneously. Anyway, Severance is good. Transitioning over to the video game side of the fence. Marvel Rivals has really taken the world by storm. What it has successfully done is take Overwatch as a game mechanic, a squad-based shooter where everyone plays different roles, put a blockbuster intellectual property in the form of Marvel. So you got all the Marvel superheroes. And then you have a Chinese game developer that's got, a huge, absolute massive staff that are going to be pumping out new heroes every few weeks. And of course, because it's Chinese, like they're the not to say there's something inherently thirsty about Chinese people or something, but like the let's just say that like free to play online games developed by Chinese developers will they much more often tend to have jiggle physics as a high priority in the backlog, and some of the characters that are already there are very clearly catering to a thirstier. Look, man, like there's just like I'm not saying that Marvel Rivals is going to be just like super sexed up gotcha game, sort of like, you know, from an artistic perspective someday, but like they're already inching that way to a point where I'm like, how is Disney greenlighting this? But of course it's in China, and it's like you can only say so much because this CCP is trying to sell your movies. But like, you know, the way that these free-to-play games typically go is they only, you know, well, gotta sell more battle passes or more characters or more skins and more outfits. Like the thirst vector can only go up. Unlike Nvidia's stock price, you're only going to get slightly bigger boobs and slightly jigglier butts as time goes on, based on the long arc of free-to-play East Asian games over time. And so I wonder where we're going to be in a couple of years. I suspect that I would be surprised if there isn't some sort of come to Jesus moment in terms of the brand safety side of this particular game, especially if it continues to take off, and how Disney feels about how its characters are represented. Because so far it seems like they're getting away with murder, but also Marvel's kind of at a nadir right now in terms of influence, and they're probably willing to take what they can get. I'm also very near the end of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which of course I cannot play on my Steam Deck. It was literally like everything short of smoking. Like the start the game up and it's just blowing hot air at the other end. So whatever, you know, when it's running in Windows mode, there's just nothing to throttle it. So I was back on my real gaming PC with my 3090 and playing Indiana Jones last night. And you can kind of just tell when the main campaign of a game, even though it feels like arbitrary, it feels like, oh yeah, I'm just in this world now, I'm doing this stuff, and like maybe there's another world. It's like it's got certain like wrap it up plot beats, like, oh wait, these characters who've never seen each other, these two antagonists are like, they're here simultaneously now, and this one, you know, enemy of my enemy is my friend shows up, and so now we're on the same side. So like little signals like that are like, you know, more big over the top set pieces, or more, you know, like tighter interplay between cinematic and then marginally interactive segment and then more cinematic. Like, so like that is accelerating that loop. And so that tells me it's like, I'm probably nearing the end of the game. So I'm almost done. About a couple hours prior in the game, there is if you know what PT is, PT stood for Playable Trailer. It was a production of Konami. Hideo Kojima, the fella who made Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding, and has made it his entire career's work to try to ingratiate himself to Hollywood and hobnob with famous people, because he's a big film buff and egomaniac. Considers himself an auteur. And so like a lot of his work is really overwrought generally. It's, you know, whatever, it's fine. He's got a whole cadre of very talented people around him. They make games in school. I play most of the games. It's fine. Well, he made a game trailer, a free demo of a game called PT, Playable Trailer, and it was a horror game. And I think it came out in 2014 with the original PS4. And the long and short of like what happened, I guess I'll do that part first and then segue into the game. Kojima leaves Konami. It's very fractious and acrimonious. The Metal Gear Solid 5 game, the last thing he worked on there, comes out in a sort of half unfinished state. Still a breakthrough game in a lot of ways, but just like, you know, not a full complete package that makes any kind of fucking sense in my opinion. I still enjoyed it. Because of that, the game that PT would have become never happened. And not only that, Konami sort of like started delisting stuff and almost threatened to get out of normal gaming entirely, kind of as a hissy fit around this. And so they delisted that PT game, and so you can't download it anymore. And because it was free, no one actually had a paid license to it, and so Sony wouldn't, you know, just let you re-download it. Which means that like
on eBay, there are PS4s for sale that have PT loaded onto them. And like, presumably you'd also be buying the account of whoever it was that had it. So like if you were real smart, you would have bought 10 PS4s and then made 10 burner accounts and downloaded nothing but PT onto each of them. And then waited a decade. So if you want to play this particular game, you got to go and buy one of these dozen or so PS4s floating around. Although I'm sure somebody's figured out a way to crack this. One would hope. So the game PT, and I was so cool because just for me personally, Jeremy happened to be in town in Columbus. And so we downloaded it and it was dark at night and we played PT and we kind of took turns with the controller. And it is a simple conceit. You are in a hallway and the hallway is a square, a big rectangle. And you walk around the hallway and stuff happens. You hear voices and you see things and they're horrific or they're mundane or it's a phone ring. You answer the phone. The phone says something creepy, but there's nowhere to go except backwards or forwards. And forwards, you're just doing another loop around the hallway. But then every time you do a loop around the hallway, something changes. Now there's like a weird, like a refrigerator hanging from the ceiling instead of a chandelier. And there's blood dripping down it, you know? But there's nothing you can do with it. So I guess I just keep walking and then you keep walking. And now it's like, oh, this door that was closed before is now open. And I go inside and I see some spooky thing, right? And as you keep going, you know, maybe you keep going and then no, nothing's happening. And it's just the same thing over and over again, which means you must have missed something. So now you got to like scour and it's like, oh, wait, this picture frame, the picture changed. And now it's this. And now it's, ooh, now this is, you know, it's a smiling family to like, you know, like, oh, the mom's missing. And then when you look at that, it'll trigger some audio cutscene the next time you go around in the loop. And you got to notice the right thing and then go. And it is terrifying. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but the creepypasta aspect of just going in this loop and every time you know you're going to get shocked in a little slightly different way. And sometimes it's going to be, you know, banal and sometimes it's going to be truly like a jump scare. Indiana Jones has a dream sequence, this is a spoiler, that is like literally fucking PT. It is the same goddamn thing. It is a geometrically impossible a hallway that just goes in circles and you have to circumnavigate it like 20-30 times to complete this segment. And every time you go through that circle, it starts off in, I'm not going to spoil it further, but like it starts off in one environment that slowly morphs into another environment. And you know, it's a dream segment, so like it's not like a supernatural thing, but holy cow, like it wasn't a horror game. It didn't just suddenly tone shift to, I'm a horror game now. Like the recent Call of Duty campaign is just like, oh, hey, what if we just throw zombies in the middle of the fucking campaign for no reason? It's not that, but it was like, it was kind of intense. It was like, it was very well designed. And the degree to which it was clearly an homage to PT is like something that would jump off the page to anyone who'd ever played PT. And so I really appreciated that. Like I don't know. I thought I'd mention. So if you know what the fuck I'm talking about, go play Indiana Jones or don't. But it was really cool. It was kind of creepy. And I you know, even if you're just passively interested in what I'm talking about, I have not searched the internet, but I assume that other people are talking about this too. And it's not just me who made this connection. I highly doubt it was a fucking coincidence. Google it and watch the video. For a significantly less creepy video gaming option, it's easy in the current era to look at pixel art or like lo-fi indie games that kind of look like generic Animal Crossing or like, you know, cozy games. There's just so many of them that they don't really stand out. Many of them are crap. Like they're just not very good. No offense, but like most games suck generally, and indie games suck more often specifically, especially when they don't, you know, have particularly attractive looking artwork or a thing to do other than to walk around. Like it's like game engines actually can carry a lot of water for you in those regards. But there's one that like I just randomly heard recommended a couple times as well. Well, you know, like it's called A Short Hike. And if you've played it, then you know this. But like I've heard somebody say, oh, well, yeah, everyone's been emulating A Short Hike for years and trying to get back, like claim that magic that it happened to capture in a bottle. Or, you know, YouTube was recommending me videos like why A Short Hike is like the best game ever, or whatever, some hyperbole. And I downloaded it and I started playing it, and A Short Hike is like a really, really, it's a clinic in game design. A dude made this, and it's just, the things that it sets out to do, it does so perfectly. You are a little bird, and you are literally like the whole setup is that you are camping, and your elder bird is like, commenting, oh yeah, by the way, you're not going to have any phone signal here. You're out of range. And the bird freaks out. And it's like, well, you can go up to this Hawk Point or whatever, like go hike up this mountain, and then you'll have signal. And so like that's the whole thing. Is the mission is go to this high point so that you have signal so that you can use your phone, because you don't want to actually commune with nature or community or whatever when you're at this out camping with your family. And you go for this hike and you meet all these fascinating people and you do all these things, and then you're like, wait a second, I'm getting snookered into actually engaging with nature and this community, aren't I? And the little adventures that you do, and it turns out it is quite, I think it's a long hike, to be honest. It's false advertising, but really delightful game. And it's not like it's a walking simulator. It's interactive. There's things to find, there's things to do, and there's like kind of little subquests. But it's what's nice about it for me anyway is like it's not beating you over the head with objectives. Like you're collecting things, and those things allow you to do things, and then the vocabulary things are allowed to do get you access to other places and things and accomplish other goals. And if you probably don't have to do all of them to complete the hike, but yeah, it's just a very natural and manages to be, it's a really good palate cleanser if you're like me and like playing a really intense or violent game, or a game that's like, got a lot of stress built in. Like lately I've been playing all these stealth action games, and like stealth really stresses me out because I hate getting caught and then having to hurry, try to escape from the bad guys that I'm not strong enough to kill myself. Having this as a thing to play after that, or when I'm not in the mood for even more violence. Because sometimes I'm in the mood for violence. I've had my fill of violence. Because actually the day I downloaded, I had just been on I-4 for 3 hours. So that's, that was enough violence for me, just the Florida exposure therapy. So that's all. I'm going to throw it as a recommendation just in case I didn't mention it already. I think I probably did, but if you're not subscribed to Becky Graham, I recommend it. It's Graham, Gram betterwithbecky.com. And you can sign up now. If you click follow and you give it your email address, you'll actually get emailed each time that Becky makes a post. Most of those posts are photos and videos, photos and or videos, carousels. It's very Instagram-like, but it's not Instagram because she owns it. And so hope you'll check it out. She writes a lot of thoughtful content, and we're currently, our goal this month is to kind of come up with a content marketing strategy. Make it sound serious. No, but really though, like it's been fun discussing with her ways that we can use this new platform to tell interesting stories and share very valuable and helpful advice. I say we here because like I'm her IT guy, but it's really she's doing the heavy lifting here. So it's been fun to help her out a little bit. And so if you subscribe now, I hope you'll stay tuned to what she's working on and sharing. Whether or not you're interested in strength training or fitness or health or nutrition or mindset stuff, she kind of has the market cornered, it seems like, on most aspects of living and breathing. But in truth, I think her perspective is really fresh, and it's interesting to see somebody who's so inclined to buck a lot of the broader trends that we find ourselves in, especially around fitfluencers, which is a word that I believe I independently invented. Although I'm sure if you Google it, it's probably emerged independently. Okay, so that's the last of the recommendations. That means we're just gonna. On my way out, I'm just going to go quickly check the mail.
You've got mail.
All right, let's see what we got. Remember, if you want to write into the show, it's podcast@searles.co. Had a weird confluence of a few different people sending in like essentially the same email. So if I don't get to yours, but I talk about the basic topic, let us, you and I right now, let's just consider that one read. No offense. Typically, whenever somebody writes in, the first in wins. Because these emails are, just send a fucking sentence. Just give me a prompt. Just Say, I want to hear Justin talk about his favorite fluffy pancakes, and that's all you got to say, and then I'll start talking about carbs. So Marius writes in with the subject treadmill gaming. It says, you often mix up gaming with other activities, and you seem to be a consistent runner. For the past couple of years, I've been doing majority of my runs on the treadmill while playing games. This doesn't seem to be like a popular activity, and I'm not sure why. Even the somewhat dead subreddit about treadmill gaming is mostly about walking pads and doing slow walks while using a computer like Linus Torvalds. Or actually, I do this too. I've got a walking pad that I, use probably about 20% of the time while I'm coding. I successfully do runs anywhere between 4 to 5 minute kilometers. So it's like 6.5 to 8 minute miles, which is pretty fucking fast. I run an 8 minute mile, and I used to run them faster, but I slowed down because I didn't want to hurt my knees, the impact was just getting to be too much. Anyway, playing games with Nintendo Joy-Cons. Now remember, Marius, don't get Joy-Conned. Is the easiest. You see, that pun's good because it's already wasting time in my brain. It's paying dividends already. Anyway, playing games with the Nintendo Joy-Cons is the easiest way to start since the hands are separated. These days, you can officially pair them with the Steam Deck or iPad, but the Switch library is probably more than enough. Switch aside, the iPad is the least complex to set up, and you can play iOS games or use some form of remote gaming like NVIDIA GeForce Now or Steam Link. PS Remote doesn't work well. I like all this practical advice, and this one does suck. Even if you get Joy-Cons to work using a non-official client, you will miss some of the controls, which is a deal breaker. This is, if you're hearing this and you've never had this epiphany before and you run on a treadmill, this is 100% great advice, and I can't believe I didn't think of it or think of sharing it before. I actually did this when we were in Ohio. I bought a nice Perforce high-end, $4,000 treadmill. And I situated it right in front of a 50-inch television screen. And then I plugged in a switch. And so, you don't want to play a super intense Twitch game where you have to have immediate reaction times necessarily. But I played Stardew Valley as part of my run every day because it's each day is pretty short. You can save relatively frequently. And with the Joy-Cons, having a separate controller in your left and right hand meant that you could have a normal gait and a normal kind of swaying of your arms, but still have a full grip on the controllers. And as long as the screen's in front of you, with a tablet on a resting on a treadmill at high speeds, those tend to bounce around a decent amount unless you got a super stable platform. So if you were to use an iPad, I'd hopefully put it up on a gooseneck or some other kind of stand. But having a TV in front of you is great, of course, if you do this at home or you're able to. Unfortunately, my house doesn't really have room for a treadmill. We've had conversations about treadmills, but there's no way we'd be able to have one without becoming a weirdo and having some common space just happen to have a weird treadmill set up in the middle of it. So it's probably no longer in the cards for me. But yeah, I played probably 150 hours of Stardew Valley over the course of the better part of a year, running my 5K every day. And that was a lot of fun. And it's motivating too, because then instead of just, listening to the, a podcast and half tuning out and thinking about other stressors or whatever, or letting my brain think real thoughts, which is separately dangerous. I could instead, harvest crops and turn that into real, gold coins in my imaginary world, or give gifts to villagers and level up the heart levels that I have with them, or participate in festivals. So I was getting a lot done while I was getting stuff done. Yeah, strongly recommend. I do miss it. I do miss that. And this email brought a smile to my cold, dead face because I that was a fun era for me, and maybe I'll get back to it someday. Maybe I'll have another running treadmill at some point. Rachel writes in, I was recently in Tokyo and I walked into a Pachi slot, that is to say a pachinko parlor, on my first trip to Japan, and got overwhelmed and immediately turned around. You've been to Japan a lot. Have you ever played pachinko? Incidentally, I have played pachinko, I think twice. One time it was when I was in college. There was a pachinko parlor in the small town I was in, because they preyed on small towns then, especially. It's, they would target economically depressed areas. And so they had a pachinko parlor near where I worked, and I was like, I got to try it. So I went to the pachinko place. I was like, you know what? Like, I just treated kind of like Vegas terms. It's really loud if you ever go in. If you don't know the basic gist, it's sort of like playing Plinko from Price is Right, except instead of just one Plinko thing going down all the pegs and bouncing around, it's like, what if it was hundreds of balls simultaneously? And you had extremely little agency, but some amount of agency over where the balls went. But it's really it's a test of, it's mostly a game of luck. And I when I'm in a casino in America, I'm very comfortable saying, I'll put $10 in, $20 in the machine, see what happens, maybe get a drink, and then be on my way. And I was at this pachinko place. I put whatever the equivalent of probably 1,000 yen into the machine is. And immediately just watched all of the little marbles drain from the top of the thing to the bottom of the thing. And then it's like, see ya. Now, people sit at these machines for hours and hours and hours, and they're sort of like slots or penny slots. They're kind of a slow burn. Over the law larger numbers is you are going to lose all of your money, but it happens at a ratio typically that is 98 cents on the dollar will get returned to you after each play, and so you will very slowly lose the money, but you'll get many hours of entertainment, right? That they say. As your life force is slowly drained from you, and as your hearing slowly goes, because just the sound of all those marbles, and then the video game speakers to drown out the sound of the marbles, just the cacophony of humanity, and at the time, heavy smoking. It's a sensory experience for the whole family, but only men, typically. And you, while you're playing. Well, first I should get back to my experience. Anyway, I lost all my money really fast. It was so fast. And there was I was in the middle of the day and I was the only guy there. It was a small town. Pachinko's a place you go after work, but before you want to go home kind of place, at least in, outside the big cities where it's probably just busy 24/7. The manager or somebody working there, they came over to me, and my Japanese wasn't very good yet, and they didn't really communicate what they were doing. But they kind of opened the machine up, and then they hit a button and they closed the machine, and then they put $10 in for me. And they said, try again, basically. And that time, wouldn't you believe it? But I won a lot. I won big. I won immediately. It was they just hit a button to say auto win for this dummy. And I don't know if everybody gets one or something, but they probably realized this guy's never going to be back again. And so maybe they had some sort of policy or some spiff that they were able to give out to entice people. It's not like this is regulated. And so I won the equivalent of $100, which to me, as somebody who I spent 6 months of my life there and I lived on barely $2,000, $100 was several weeks of groceries for sure. At least. God, yeah. So I was over the moon, and then I did the rational thing and was I am clocking the fuck out of here right away. And so I took my now 10 times larger little basket of marbles, and here's how it works. So gambling is illegal, but you can trade metals or some sort of intermediary currency like these pachinko marbles, and you can take the little tray of BBs to a counter, and you can exchange those for a prize. And what's the prize, you say? Well, it's not money, because that would be gambling. It's instead it's a plastic card or a token or some sort of trivial, tchotchke. And typically it's as if you're trading, if you've played a metal game, I guess, or it's as if you're trading, these coins that don't matter, or playing cards for casino chips. It's a color-coded, slotted plastic thing. It's okay, so I got this two yellow chips back or something. They're pieces of plastic. And I'm okay, so what do I do with these? They're not functional. It's not like a keychain. And because my Japanese ability was so non-existent, the staff kind of had to spell out for me what is by design in order to skirt gambling regulations, a gray and implicit procedure. So what they sort of steered me gently without explicitly saying, no, dummy, you trade this plastic for money. They're like, go outside to the back. And then in a separate freestanding structure that is definitely not the pachinko building anymore, it is a different building that just so happens to trade pieces of plastic for hard cash. It's a simple business, you know? So I gave them my little yellow piece of plastics and handed that to them. And it was like a love hotel in that you don't get to see the person. It was just like an opaque piece of glass and a little hand underneath it, right? So you'd in the little tray, you'd put your plastic and then money would go there and then you'd take the money and then you'd go. And so that's why pachinko isn't gambling. So yeah, that was my first experience. And then every time after that, I've been like, you know what? I think I already had the perfect experience. I think I should probably leave it at that. I might have played it once in Kyoto later on that year and then immediately lost all my money and it was like, yes, dummy, no. Unless somebody's going to hit a button for you. Yeah, and that's what I was doing. I was like, maybe if I sit over here as a dumb gaijin, like maybe if I lose my money fast enough, they'll take pity on me and I'll hit the button again. I'll get $10, another $100. And that's like not how any of this works. So that's not what happened. Spencer writes in, talking about X-Real glasses. I'd been curious as you talked about X-Real glasses connected to your MacBook. Those are those AR glasses that project 1080p postage stamp size screens into each eye. As you've talked about X-Real glasses connected to your MacBook, but then when you suggested getting them for the Steam Deck, I had to pick up a pair. I'm enjoying using them a few days in. Do you have a pair of X-Real 1 or do you use a different model? I am pretty sure that what I have is called the X-Real Air 2. They also have like the X-Real Air Ultra and 1 and some other ones. But as far as I can tell, literally all of these things are the exact same part, like the exact same LCD part. It like same size, same 1080p resolution. All that seems to change is brightness, which is like not the screen per se, and some color gamut stuff, which might be like a little bit different. So like I don't think it really matters which model you get. I would just get the cheapest one because at the end of the day, you're just paying for a really cheap screen that goes right over your eyeballs and is connected via USB-C to something that can output that. But man, I got 4 emails from people who either just decided to try X-Real glasses for this exact purpose to play games or to use their phone or something with a neutral neck posture. And all but one had a really good experience. And the one who didn't, I think the thing to look out for with these kinds of products is that they don't want to market as, hey, we're just like a shitty TV in your eye holes for fake glasses. Cause like that doesn't sound like the future, but if they call them AR glasses and if they offer a mode or an accessory that enables the Vision Pro style of taking a screen and stationarily putting it in a place, like anchoring a particular screen in space or at a particular place in your field of vision, such that you can move your head left, right, and the screen will stay put. They offer these modes too, where they will take the feed in and then they'll kind of render it that way. If they offer that, trust me, it will be bad because you're looking at a $300, $400, $500 piece of hardware. And to do that well takes a $3,500 piece of hardware, it turns out. And even that is like, not that interesting. Like if using my Vision Pro, if the Mac screen was always perfectly in front of me, I'd also be fine with that. Like I don't need it to, to lay out my office with different screens every which place as if I'm going to swivel around. It's like, no, I'm a sedentary motherfucker. Like I'm just show me the goddamn shit right in. Where do I want if I'm playing a video game or watching a movie, I want to be 3 fucking inches from the screen and I want to fill up as much of my field of view as possible. And the answer to the question of how close should I be is as close as I can be without the vision getting blurry, right? I want the eyes to burn out. Thank you, mother. So the idea that you would turn on an AR mode that's just going to like do some sort of shitty real-time resizing and keystoning of the image that's just going to pixelate it further and take up less of the overall display space to show it. Like, it makes no sense. Just have it be in default mode and the image always glued to directly in front of you. Do not use these in AR mode. They will advertise it as if that's what you got to do, and they will advertise like all of the add-ons like the beam as being necessary, and just don't do that. Thank you, Spencer. Have fun playing games. Neil writes in about Prism. This is from Christmas time because new versions of Ruby release on Christmas Day. He says, most Ruby users might not notice this, but I'm excited that Prism is the default parser as of Ruby 3.4. What's your favorite change with the new release? If you don't know what Prism is or how Ruby parsers work, and you're interested in this, the episode that I did back in late May, where I was recapping Ruby Kaigi, I talk a bit about the parser wars, and not to say Prism won outright, but the fact that like both of them shipped with Ruby 3.3, the old parser that had been rewritten by Kaneko-san, and Ruby and Prism, which is funded by Shopify, and oh God, I always forget the guy's name. Kevin Mitchell, there's multiple Kevins. Richards? Ugh. Is that Kramer? Ah, fuck me. That's Michael Kramer. No, Michael Richards. Anyway, when no offense to anyone here, but like when a white guy has a name whose first and last name are both white guy first names, it's really hard for me to keep it straight. And it's even harder with three white guy first names like Neil Patrick Harris. All right. So anyway, Prism is great. The reason Prism is great, not only because it's fast and comprehensible, but because the API because it's a handwritten parser, you can actually do metaprogramming that is much more interesting by navigating the structure of code via code much more sanely than when you try to use Ripper or the kind of less sophisticated abstract syntax trees that the Ruby API previously exposed. And, even if that's something that you don't need in your daily life and times as a programmer, and spoiler alert, very few people do, the amount of tooling that we can build once we have that is really phenomenal. And so RuboCop stands to gain greatly from this, like a next generation of linters and formatters might emerge, as well as the Ruby LSP that Shopify is also making to improve the development experience of using Ruby. Really will depend on Prism to be able to build a common shared index that multiple extensions can then use in creative and interesting ways. So I think Prism really is the deal, the big deal here. I don't know if this one landed in 3.4 or not, but they have a new block shorthand called it. So if you're mapping over a bunch of stuff or doing a filter operation or whatever, anytime you're calling one of these like built-in methods, although I think this also works for non-built-in methods, like that would be you pass a block and then you typically only care about the first parameter because you're having that block operate on everything in, say, an array or in a hash. If you only care about the first parameter, there had been this like numbered shorthand syntax where you could do _1 or _2 to refer to what would be the first and second block parameter without explicitly naming them. Eyes are glazing over. I get it. If this might be hard to follow. I always thought that was like really ugly. Like, I don't want to do _1 to indicate like the first thing that this block got passed. I get that you're limited in what identifiers are legal, and so that's what they did. But this just got merged into Ruby, and I'm not sure if it made it or not, but like you can just say it. So you just say it, like it dot whatever, which I think is really clever. So like it just becomes the default first block arg as an alias to _1. So now you can, like, when you're mapping over, say like, or say you're doing find. So like I've got a list of people and I want to find the first one whose email address is at hotmail.com. So I've got like users.find, and then in the block, instead of having a redundant looking, user param, I can just say it.email.starts with, or ends with hotmail.com. So that it as a shorthand, so you're not declaring a kind of duplicative parameter inside the block. I think that's really neat. Little tiny. I love that Ruby is still getting little touches like that. So that's all I gotta say about that. And look at us. We're coming right at 3 hours. That means it's quitting time here at Searles LLC Productions. It's big day here Sunday, the January 19th, the dawn of the third day before whatever the fuck is going to happen for the next 4 to 8 years. We say 4 to 8, 4 to N, or N to M. Who knows? I don't know what we're in for. All I know is that we deserve it.